Good afternoon and welcome to the City Planning Commission remote special public meeting. Before beginning the meeting, I want to acknowledge the loss of a great leader of the city and specifically of Queens. We learned earlier today of the passing of Claire Schulman. I had the pleasure of working closely with her during the Dinkins administration in connection with the lease of a portion of Flushing Meadows Park to construct the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. And I have rarely worked with an elected official who was as expert, as passionate in her advocacy, but also with the warmth of the mother and grandmother that she was. And so I do want to recognize our sadness at the passing of Claire Schulman. They don't make many like her. And with that, Mr. Singer, please begin.
Sure. Good afternoon. This is the City Planning Commission special public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal. Today is Monday, August 17th, 2020. I will now call the roll. Chair Lago.
Here.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Here, and I echo the sentiments of the chair with regard to the passing of Claire Schulman.
Commissioner Burney.
Could be muted, maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if he is in the lineup. I do not see him. Okay, we'll mark him absent for now. Commissioner Capelli.
Present.
Commissioner Cirillo.
Here.
Commissioner De La Uz.
Here.
Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin. Okay. Commissioner, oh, there we go.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Here.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Also would like to thank the chair for recognizing the Queensborough President Claire Schulman. She was a visionary leader who was driven and inspired others. So thank you for taking a moment to recognize it.
A quorum is present. Let us turn to page 1 in the calendar. Scheduling, calendar numbers 1 through 5. We have resolutions for adoption, scheduling Wednesday, August 19th, 2020 for a remote public hearing to be held through the NYC Engage portal.
On the resolutions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the resolutions are adopted. Mr. Singer, any other business before the commission?
No, Madam Chair.
Well, then this special meeting is adjourned.
Okay, so continuing to the review session. Good afternoon. This is the review session for the New York City Planning Commission for Monday, August 17th, 2020, held via a Zoom webinar in the NYC Engage portal. The time is 1:04 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is a presentation for future certification of amendment to an urban renewal plan in Manhattan Community Districts 10 and 11. Here to present to the commission for his first time is Jose Trucios.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice meeting you, even if it's virtually. Happy to be here today. Jeff, can we go to the first slide of the presentation? Well, I think that's the last one. All right. I'm gonna pull my video down because it affects my connectivity. So see you in a little bit. Good afternoon, commissioners. We bring to you an application to approve the amendment to extend the duration of the Harlem is Harlem Urban Renewal Plan. The New York City Department of Housing and Preservation and Development seeks an approval for an urban renewal amendment to the Harlem is Harlem renewal plan to extend the duration of 40 years for the continued agency administration and management of the plan in Community District 10 and 11. I will refer to the Harlem is Harlem urban renewal plan as the plan, and to the Harlem is Harlem urban renewal area as the area to ensure we finish this presentation in time. The plan was created in 1968, and since then, 15 amendments have prolonged its duration till this December 19, 2020. This application does not change the geographic scope or propose any new development on a specific site in the area, and no project or new construction is associated with the application. Next slide, please. The area is located in Community District 10 and 11 in the borough of Manhattan and is generally bounded by East 106th Street to the south, FDR to the east, ending in a zigzag motion at Madison Park, Lexington, and Fifth Avenue to the west. The Harlem River Drive at East 32nd to the north. The area encompasses a major portion of the overall Harlem area, approximately 150 blocks, containing a wide variety of building types as well as a range of structural conditions. The land uses surrounding the project include residential, industrial, religious, institutional, and recreational sites. Commercial uses are concentrated along East 25th Street, as well immediately north of the project area. The predominant zoning district in surrounding areas are R7-2, with a variety of other contextual districts. The area is well served with public transportation, and the East Harlem Special District and Special 125th districts are mapped within the surrounding area. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of history in the plan. In 1968, the city designated the area and established a plan pursuant to Article 15 of the General Municipal Law, or Renewal Law. The plan was created to redevelop the neighborhoods of Central Harlem and East Harlem in a comprehensive manner, with the objective to create a healthy and attractive residential environment through some of the following techniques: removing blind and rehabilitate standard and unsanitary structures, land use provision, and building design requirements pertaining to permitted uses, permitted densities, and parking requirements. These core development objectives will allow the plan to develop the area in a manner compatible with the surrounding community in terms of scale, and also reinforce existing urban character. The city has amended the plan multiple times, including the last amendment in 2008, the 15th Amendment, and a first minor change to the 15th Amendment in 2017, and a second one in 2018. As previously mentioned, in 2017, the Harlem rezoning overlap with the area. These areas include Lexington Avenue, 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenues to the eastern side, and Upper Avenue as well. The city approved the East Harlem rezoning in 2017, building upon recommendations in the plan to create and preserve affordable housing in the area. And in 2019, follow up with separate actions to respond to concerns related to maximum allowable building heights along portions of Park Avenue and pedestrian circulation at the intersection of East 116 and Lexington Avenue. Next slide. I just wanted to point out a quick kind of real sample of what is necessary, this extension to the extra 40 years. Now we'll use the One East Harlem project. The One East Harlem is a key component of the East 125th Street development project, a new mixed-use development rising on the former side of the NTA bus depot. The new Proton Center, a cutting-edge cancer treatment facility and anchor tenant, is next door to the block. The work program last summer, so like the work started in 2019, occupying the site. And as of 2018, the remaining of the parcels, parcel B in the urban renewal area and parcel A, are still yet to be disposed by HPD. And HPD would like to convey them at the same site of the site-specific size control on the plan. So in order to like facilitate the development of the entire proposal, HPD would like to maintain, to extend the plan to actually facilitate the development of this, to have the same design requirements, the same allowable densities that were proposed on the One East Harlem plan. Next slide. Sorry. The approval of the proposed action will facilitate the continuation of the agency and administration, as well as the management as necessary. Approval of the proposed action will also allow flexibility regarding sites still under HPD jurisdiction, approximately 15 sites. As previously mentioned, the restrictions related to the design permitted land use high intensity in the plan are important for the future development of the community, and HPD believes it's important to keep this in place. As part of the 16th Amendment objective, it continues to be the intent of the plan that the area should be developed in a manner compatible with or beneficial to the surrounding community. The project should harmonize in a scale, configuration, and materials to the prevailing neighborhood pattern. Once again, the only change proposed to the last amendment is the duration of the plan for another 40 years. The plan will expire 40 years from the day of approval of this 16th amendment, continue to the expiration of the day plan, as mentioned, December 19, 2020. With that, I can answer any questions or try to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the commission? I'm looking for raised hands. Okay, not hearing any questions. The department will certify this application on the day that ULURP restarts, September 14th, 2020. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Ryan. Ryan?
Good afternoon, commissioners. We will move on to item number 2.
Thanks, Edwin.
My pleasure, Madam Chair. The second item on our agenda is a non-ULURP modification to a previously approved special permit in Manhattan Community District 5. Jose Trucios will describe the modification.
Hi, Commissioner. Hi again. All right. Today we bring to you a private application requesting a 4 minor modification of a previously approved zoning special permit to allow the operation of an outdoor cafe in a portion of the non-bonus public accessible open space in the Paramount building located at 1633 Broadway in Midtown Manhattan. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. Siren Rickel and Greenberg represent Princi, a Milan-based all-day Italian bakery and cafe backed by Starbucks. The applicant seeks to approval of the 4 modification to a previously approved special permit. The requested modification will allow a 639 square foot outdoor cafe in a portion of the non-bonus public accessible open space surrounding the Paramount building at 1633 Broadway in Midtown Manhattan, Community District 5, Council District 3. The community board met in early July and approved the application with conditions related to sign requirements that I will describe later on. It granted the operation of the Opera Cafe will continue to operate in accordance with the requirements set forth in zoning resolution 3773. Next slide. The development site is located in block 1022, lot 43 highlighted in the shaded red area in here. It covers the majority of the block bounded by Broadway, West 53, 8th Avenues, and West 51st Street. The property contains over 90,000 square feet lot area and is located in a 6-7 commercial district within the Theater District of the Special Midtown District. The site is well served by mass transit with numerous bus stops within the surrounding area. The closest sidewalk stop is the 50th Street station immediately south of the development, serving the 1, 2, A, C, and E lines. The portion of the block not occupied by the proposed development is improved by 3 buildings fronting 8th Avenue. Next slide. The restaurant is located in the northeast corner of the development site along the mid-block and West 51st Street. And the proposed outdoor cafe will be located immediately next to the restaurant here on the red dashed area. In 1968, the commission granting special permit CP 20250 to allow for modifications of height, setback, and tower regulations pursuant to section 7472 of the New York zoning resolution to increase the permitted floor area ratio from 15 FAR to 20.8 FAR in exchange for the provision of 2 new theaters, the Gershwin and the Circle in the Square theaters, pursuant to former resolution section 8106. The special permit also required the provision of open space to its conjunction in the area, approving a 13,700 square open space fronting Broadway. Since then, the Commission has approved 3 minor modifications in 1989, 2012. The minor modifications were granted to permit design changes to the open space fronting Broadway, and in 2014 to allow a 625 square feet outdoor cafe to the portion located on the northeast part of the West 51st Street. Next slide. Currently, the proposed development site is improved with the Paramount building, a 48-story commercial office tower with over 2 million square feet in the gross floor area. The ground floor is occupied by a bank, 2 restaurants, a gym, and 2 theaters occupying the base. The site has over 16,000 square feet of open space fronting Broadway, 15-foot wide sidewalks along West 50 and West 51st Streets, a through block arcade, and a driveway connecting West 53 and West 51st Street at the western end of the development site to provide access to the 2 bonus theaters. The neighborhood surrounding the zoning line is predominantly characterized by commercial uses, including hotels, theaters, office, ground floor retail service uses, as well as residential uses and a few institutional uses. Next slide. The proposed outdoor cafe will occupy approximately 639 feet of the open space fronting the restaurant. I will have a depth of 12 feet 11 inches and a width of 51 feet 7 inches approximately. It will include 16 tables and 48 chairs. The cafe will also be delineated by a 1-inch white painting marking line, and hours of operation will be from Monday to Sunday from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The tables, chairs, service stations will be removed at night when the store is closed, and the applicant intends to utilize the proposed outdoor cafe from April to October each year permitting. The application includes a notice of restrictions. The NOR will require that as a conduction of the requested action, the open air cafe approval be effective for a 3-year period similar to open air cafes provided in public plazas, pursuant to the zoning resolution section 3773. At the expiration of the period, in order to continue to operate the cafe must submit to the chairperson an application for a follow-up action to the cafe approval, which we approve will be in effect for an additional 3 years, and so on. The applicant team share a plan for social distancing by having the reduced amount of tables from the proposed in the drawing that you guys can see here, which was 16 tables and 48 chairs. They're proposing to use in the meantime, while social distancing regulations are in effect, 7 tables and 14 seats. This will be 6 feet apart, which complies with the recent COVID-19 New York State guidelines and recommendation for social distancing and outdoor dining. The cafe staff will be required to wear face coverings and will be cleaning and sanitizing all high-touch surfaces at every switch of the customers. No additional changes are proposed to the open space, except for the addition of the proposed outdoor cafe adjacent to the restaurant. Next slide. The community board agreed to review the proposal out of sequence, taking into consideration the extenuating circumstances caused by COVID-19 and the CPC hearings and ULURP suspension. The community board also requested to have the application sent back to them for another review and input if changes up to the proposal will be required. Normally, this application will be referred after being presented to the CPC, but we work with the community board and the applicant to have the recommendation as a favor to actually push for this moving forward. On July 9th, the community board 5 passed the resolution on the application with a vote of 42 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstaining. Approval with conditions is stipulated that signage of adequate sight and visibility is provided, indicating the seating is available for the public to use with and without a purchase, including sandwich boards and menu cards located on the tables. The applicant agreed to CB5 demands providing a signed affidavit and decides to make seating available for the public to use with and without a purchase. However, the department notes that a signed affidavit is not a binding document, and the additional signage and public accessibility demands are not required as part of the special permit, the NOR, or the zoning resolution 3773. The applicant is providing what is needed pursuant to zoning and design guidelines, which is 2 permanent signs fixed to the building indicating the days and hours of operations. Additionally, in order to ensure the viability of the restaurant while seating is limited to outdoors dining only and further limited by social distancing rules, they ask the stipulation no comments and the restaurants are able to open in a normal capacity. Next slide. To finalize, I would like to add the 51st Street is generally relatively unpopulated aside from the Azalea outdoor cafe that you can see in the picture in here. It's a 60 cafe located in the northwest corner of the development side. The proposed cafe will provide a visual anchor for the eastern end of the open space, as well as an opportunity to activate a portion of the open space that is now underutilized. And with that, I can answer any questions you have.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Cerullo.
I couldn't find my hand, so I'm glad you saw mine, Madam Chair. So first of all, thank you for the presentation. I guess part of this is just trying to understand all the different things that are happening right now in our city and the relationship to this application. So, and obviously the importance of finding outdoor spaces for people to engage our food and beverage industry is critical. The city's done an amazing job in creating the outdoor dining program, which is quite successful and really a lifeline to the industry that is so desperate for the lifeline. But I guess my question is grows out of a couple of things. So this application is coming to us because it's a new business in this location, or the previous authorization to operate this type of activity on the plaza has expired? What is triggering this particular action based on the fact that this use was already permissible at this location?
Right. So what is happening here is that it's coming for the to the CPC because it's a part of a special permit. So it's not a normal POPs as it operates. Normally we'll go to the chair briefing, but since it's part of the special permit and part of the non-bonus plaza, it needs to come to the CPC. There is another cafe operating, which actually was certified again in 2018. The one that had in the previous picture, the Azalea outdoor restaurant. So they went to a similar format to actually certify, had the NOR and the same process.
And so it's really it's a renewal of it that's required, or?
No, it will be a second restaurant. So one will relocate it in the northwest portion, and the other one in the
separate. I got it. So let me ask you this, based on the community board's recommendations, could this food establishment, we'll call it a food establishment, right now operate in some as of right manner under the existing open dining program the city has? I know that's not permanent, obviously, it only is as valid as the program is. But could this business, with exclusive use for its own customers, engage that program, again, shorter term, more risky in the long run, versus going through this process, which seems to be an attempt to use exclusive use, but the community board is recommending it remain open to the public, which is a little different.
Yeah, they could. And for what I last heard with the applicant, they were planning on doing something, and because we didn't have a date for the CPC restart. But the application was already in process in 2018, so we continue to move forward. Like, as you mentioned, this will give them the opportunity to formalize the open air cafe going forward. But they can actually have, as part of the executive order, move with the outdoor dining if they prefer so.
Okay, so
as you noted, Commissioner, it will also allow them, if the commission agrees, to continue to operate even after the emergency executive order.
That's correct. I mean, and I know there's lots of discussion about whether this type of a program should continue on in perpetuity or be sort of redeveloped in a longer term, perhaps, we're in a new world. But I did want to understand how the layers of this, so this is sort of the long-term, more guaranteed, obvious legal process. But at the same time, there is the sort of perhaps seasonal or short-term plan pursuant to the executive order that could be engaged if they wanted to.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, we next have Vice Chair Knuckles, who will be followed by Commissioners Levin and Ortiz.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go over the social distancing issue. You indicated that the plans that were just shown did not reflect that, the social distancing. Just reiterate how that social distancing configuration will be confirmed.
Yeah, so I don't have the drawings. They were kind of, as I mentioned, like before, they're proposing in the previous image that I show is 16 tables and 48 chairs, and part of the actual application will be 7 tables and 14 chairs. So, sorry, 7 tables and 14 seats. So they're reducing that, but I don't have a graphic to.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the remainder of what you said. You said you'll have a graphic?
I don't have a design about like a design of the open air cafe of the COVID plan. Yeah.
And I'll note that the responsibility for the COVID operation, which is pursuant to the emergency executive order, the commission would not be responsible for that enforcement. Enforcement would be lodged as part of the city's open restaurants, open streets program.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking, since we were reviewing it, you know, was there some need for us to see the actual configuration consistent with social distancing? But okay.
It was actually more for informational purposes, to give a sense that they intended to operate properly during the period of social distancing.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you. First off, Jose, welcome to our midst. It's nice to have a new face, not behind the podium this time, but at least on our screen. And very glad to have you here. And thank you for 2 nice presentations. Could you say again what you explained about the community board process? Are they going to see this application again, or?
Yeah.
If I could, I'm glad to step in here because this is unusual. On these types of modifications of special permits, the only action that is required is at the City Planning Commission level. It is the type of action that does not go to the council.
Right.
It is not legally required to refer these matters to the community boards, but as a matter of good governance and practice, we routinely do. In this instance, the applicant worked with the community board, recognizing that this application had been frozen because the commission wasn't meeting, and agreed to review the application even before the commission made a referral. And because it came back with such strong support, and because we are interested in restarting the life of the city, part of which is the street life, the department is recommending that we not refer this back to the community board, which has spoken, and instead, unless there are concerns from commissioners, intend to ask for ayes and yays to send a letter to the Department of Buildings.
Okay, well, in that case, then I would like to speak up in favor of the community's recommendation about signage here. I understand that's not part of our standard POPs situation, but this cafe is located in such a place that I think it's important for the public to understand that everyone is welcome in this space. And you know, it often happens in these cafes, particularly the ones that are now being allowed. It's appropriate for a restaurant to be able to exclude the public, but this one is different. It's occupying different kind of space. And I hope there is some way that the applicant can be, that will follow through on their indication to the community board that they are willing to provide that kind of signage. Is one, you know, the applicant is the building owner here. Well, I don't know, maybe it's Starbucks, but time goes by and people forget what the rules are here. And I think we need to have an enduring indication that this is available to the public without a purchase. I don't know how we do that in the certification mode, but perhaps a letter from the commission back to the applicant reinforcing our enthusiasm for their following through on their commitment to the community.
What we could do is have the department write back to the applicant expressing the commission's interest in this. The other is I think we are benefited by having a very involved community board that will serve as the eyes and ears were.
Right.
Right.
But documenting our own support for that commitment will be helpful to them as they use their enforcement powers in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi. My apologies. I'm not sure what's wrong with my video, but Commissioner Cerullo asked the question I originally had, which was around, what really triggers a special permit. So thank you for that. And I would agree with the effort to expedite approval given what's happening. My remaining question is around, this potential conflict between users that we see as a result of this attempt to answer to, the public nature of this space while we're also trying to support a private use. And I would be interested in sort of how they plan to actually manage that. In addition to the signs. And I wondered if this space is in fact eligible for the outdoor dining program, and if they also plan to pursue the dining program along the streets and the curb.
I am not sure they're eligible for the outdoor program, but I can find out for you. And the other suggestion, I'm definitely taking notes on that to see, because we didn't talk about actually programming in that sense, or like follow up, but I can find out for you.
Commissioner Ortiz, if I may, and Madam Chair, this is Eric Botsford from the Manhattan office. I step up to the podium virtually. I just want to provide a little bit more color on how we typically review these types of open air cafe applications, and really with an eye on striking a balance between the public's continued right to use and enjoy the space, together with the ability of a private operator to utilize the space for, a private commercial enterprise. When we do look at these types of applications, we think it's really critically important that the public be able to, access and utilize the parts of the space that are not being programmed for cafe use, and that amenities are present for the public to circulate through the space, to, relax, enjoy the space for passive use. There's seating available for public use. But that cafe operations are, by their nature, private use of the space that enliven and enhance the public's use of the space, through the ability to, patronize an establishment and sit and enjoy their, food or beverages in the cafe area. So it really is about striking that balance. And, with all of our applications, it's a really critical aspect of our review to ensure that the public's use of the space is protected and enhanced, through what is being facilitated through the application.
Yeah, Eric, I hear you, and I know, Commissioner Levin raised that issue. I do think we're in a unique time right now, given, the impact of COVID. I know this is a 3-year term. Is that correct for this application and for the permit?
Yes.
And, in some ways, I think that we have to balance, really a challenging situation for many of these restaurants who, without this space, would not survive, period. And we have given over the public realm in the street to private uses. So, there is precedent in this moment for recognizing the unique challenges that the industry faces, and that we have to have, unique solutions that perhaps aren't the kind of balance that we might have struck in the past.
You're so right, Commissioner Ortiz. That's something that in crafting and refining the program that we're aware of, that had we kept in place the requirements that we had before, our streets would be far less lively than they are now. If I
have a
would
question.
next call on Commissioner Bruni.
Oh.
And after that, Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you. Thank you. So clearly, I mean, the issue here is the privatization of a privately owned public space. And I'm usually constantly vigilant in opposing that sort of thing, because I think it happens too often and we have bonusable space that's then taken back and privatized. But I have to say, I think in this case, for the reasons that Commissioner Ortiz outlined, I think it's important. And I think the particular space that they're taking over, and I don't believe that putting up signs will do anything to prevent its privatization. It's not actually the best and most useful space in that POPs anyway. It's kind of around the side and it's pretty underutilized. So I would be inclined to support this. I do think, though, that in return, we should ask the building owner to remove the top 2 floors of the building, of the bonusable area, just to sort of make it equal to the amount of plaza still left. So we should do.
Actually, Commissioner, I can put your mind at ease in that this is not a POPs.
Oh, I thought it was.
No, and the space was not bonused. And so your policy concerns aren't implicated here.
Oh, terrific. I was assuming it was a POPs.
No, and it wasn't, it was non-bonus space, which was an important part of the consideration.
Oh, well, then I withdraw. He can keep the top 2 floors after all. Okay.
Thank you. The building owner, I'm sure, thanks you. Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was also under the impression that it was a POPs reading the letter from Community Board 5. It delineates it as such. So I had a couple of questions. My first question is regarding the executive order on outdoor dining. Does that include POP spaces? And the second question is specifically to this special permit application. I noted it's a 3-year term. I would think that might be a little onerous to come back to the commission every 3 years. Perhaps is it a way that can be done through a chairperson certification instead of having to come back to a full commission review and hire Greenberg Traurig for what's an outdoor cafe, and who knows where the world will be in 3 years anyway. So those are my 2 questions.
Yeah, I can answer the second one, and it will be, so for the renewal, it won't have to come for the CPC. It will be part of that chair certification. So that was the notice of restriction implies what the process will be and operate under the zoning resolution 3773. Very similar to POPs, but no particular. And I'm gonna kind of pass the question for the POPs to Eric to help me out here. So I'm not as familiar with the process on that one.
Sure. Yeah, happy to jump in. Thank you, Commissioner Dweck. One of the executive orders that was issued in this current emergency does speak to allowing waiving various provisions related to POPs. And one of those is to permit outdoor dining to take place in POPs throughout the city. And there are protocols that are located on the Department of City Planning's website that help property owners understand what is permitted and how to go about locating outdoor dining within POPs. And provided that property owners or restaurants follow those protocols, they simply have to notify the department of their intention to utilize the provisions, and then they can locate outdoor dining as of right within the POPs for the duration of the emergency.
I'll note that what Eric described seems very straightforward and simple, but it was anything but. Our regulations, our requirements in the zoning resolution for POPs are found all throughout. It's not as if you go to one section of the zoning resolution. And so to implement the open restaurants, open streets program, both on sidewalks and in POPs, we had to scrub the zoning resolution to identify every provision that needed temporarily to be suspended so that we could allow the restaurants to do exactly what Eric described, which is as of right on a self-certified basis, be able to operate. You don't have to apply and then wait for an answer. The restaurateur just self-certifies.
Madam Chair, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, we have Commissioner Rompershad and then Commissioner Cerullo. Commissioner Rompershad?
My apologies, I was on mute. Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe I missed it, but looking at the floor plan, I'm just curious, how come they're not utilizing the space between the trees, the tree pits there? It's still within the property. So I was just curious of why not utilize it, and with regards to everything that's happening now and social distancing. Can that be utilized?
Sorry. Yeah, so the approved plans were reviewed by our technical division in here, and it's part of like why we cannot deem acceptable under our regulations and part of the circulation. So to not affect the circulation with the sidewalk as well to the cafe. And what we found acceptable is the 639 feet of the actual square footage. But I don't like that's part of like we have very certain like guidelines in terms of how much like how far away you can be for certain obstructions on the sidewalk, and that's what like limits how the location of the actual tables and chairs.
Thank you.
It's the same balance that Jose has discussed throughout of recognizing that we are privatizing some space, but it's also enlivening the space, but still assuring that the open space is available for all the other uses. Commissioner Cirillo.
I only wanted to just acknowledge the work that the department had done on the program, which is, as I said earlier, it's really been proven to be quite successful. And also wanted to identify, while we focused on the privately owned public spaces, that there is eligibility for businesses to even use public plaza space that would otherwise be accessible to the public, but not privately owned, managed through a partner, or just operated by the city itself. But so long as there's adjacency to a food establishment, and it's without it, we would have some businesses that would be boarded up already. But I know this was not easy, and I think it's just a new way for us to have to be looking at these things. And hopefully it will matter, in the long term. I just wondered if part of the reason that that space, Raj, that you mentioned, was that an adjacency issue there too? Is it that the frontage, are they limited to the frontage or only in the outdoor dining program versus the special permit? Is there a difference in the geography that they can use? Because in outdoor dining, it's related to the frontage versus, I don't know if the special permit's related to the frontage as well.
I'm not 100% sure about the actual outdoor program, but I know like we usually, when we're talking about the special permit, we're talking about the plaza space. So it will be a little bit different in how we're processing the space and what we analyze. And the other thing I think is more of like the public space, you taking over the parking or the frontage.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then we will, the department will send a letter to the applicant and noting the commission's interest in having the applicant keep its commitment to the community board that it will keep the space available even for those not making a purchase, keep the seating available even for those not making a purchase. And with that, I would ask for yeas and nays to send a letter of approval to the Department of Buildings. And so if I could ask for the ayes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, we'll then be sending the letter and speeding this along. Thank you for the healthy discussion.
You guys, thank you.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Eric. Item 3 on our agenda is a post-referral review of a non-ULURP authorization in Manhattan Community Board 1. Our presenter is Connor Clark.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Can we just go to the first slide? I think this is toward the end. Okay, got it. So this is a private application by Intergate Manhattan LLC, which seeks a parking authorization for a 15-space accessory garage at 375 Pearl Street, located just north of the Brooklyn Bridge in Manhattan Community District 1. The zoning authorization allows an off-street parking facility in the Manhattan core with a maximum capacity of 15 spaces in an existing building developed without the provision of parking. The applicant also seeks an authorization to construct a new curb cut on a wide street to access the parking spaces. The application was referred on March 2nd and is back for review. I'll take you through an abbreviated version of the presentation, including public comments. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, thanks. The development site, which is coterminous with the project area, consists of blocks surrounded by Pearl Street to the east, Madison Street to the north, and Avenue of the Finest to the west. The block includes 375 Pearl Street, outlined in red on this map, and Murray Bertram High School adjacent to it. The first authorization requested under 13442 would allow for the conversion of one of 3 loading bays into a 7,900 square foot unattended off-street ground floor 15-space garage. The second authorization requested under section 13441 would allow for the installation of a new curb cut on Avenue of the Finest, a wide street. Currently, there is a 60-foot wide curb cut that serves 3 loading bays in the building. If granted the authorization, the applicant would eliminate this curb cut and replace it with one 32-foot 5-inch curb cut for the 2 loading bays and a 22-foot wide curb cut for the garage. The parking spaces would be leased to office tenants, including the Department of Finance and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. The building is located in an NYPD lockdown zone with checkpoints closing off all vehicle access to Avenue of the Finest and several surrounding streets. The department does not anticipate any major on-street vehicle congestion issues or traffic and pedestrian conflicts associated with the garage. Next slide. The area map shows the development site is located next to the Brooklyn Bridge in a C64 zoning district, which has a maximum permitted FAR of 10. The development site is surrounded by a mix of uses, including One Police Plaza to the north and NYCHA's Alfred E. Smith houses to the east. Approaches and ramps to the Brooklyn Bridge are located south and west of the development site. The area is well served by public transit, with the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall station served by the 456 J and Z trains, and the Fulton Street station served by the 2 and 3 trains located nearby. Several local and express bus routes serve the area. Next slide. These site photos show the entrance to one-way westbound Avenue of the Finest at Pearl Street. The Verizon building appears in the photo on the left. The photo on the right is a close-up of the NYPD checkpoint for all vehicles entering the avenue. Next slide. The photo on the left shows the access area with the loading docks looking east. The photo on the right shows the proposed off-street parking facility outlined in red. You can also see the existing 60-foot wide curb cut in this photo. The curb cut would essentially be split into 2 separate curb cuts. There would also be very little change to the existing streetscape, except for the addition of a speed bump and striping in the driveway. Next slide. The site plan shows the development site. 375 Pearl is in gray in the center of the plan. Avenue of the Finest is one-way westbound along the left side of the drawing. The school is at the top. The garage entrance and the NYPD checkpoint are on the lower left-hand corner of the drawing. Next slide. This shows the parking plan on the ground floor of 375 Pearl Street. After passing through the NYPD checkpoint, cars would proceed west and turn right over the new curb cut. Cars would drive on the left-hand side of the driveway to access the intercom and swipe pad. Drivers would swipe an electronic key card, which would open the door. Cars would then proceed through the one-way entrance and park in one of the 15 spaces. Exiting cars would proceed to the sensor, which would trigger the door to open. This would also trigger a stop signal in the entrance lane, preventing any entering cars from proceeding. This is necessary because the entrance is 14 feet wide, which is not wide enough to accommodate 2 drive lanes. Next slide. There were two recent actions at 375 Pearl Street. In 2017, the CPC approved certifications by DCAS to acquire office space for city agencies and for the redesign of an existing plaza and the elimination of non-bonus open areas. This was part of the rehabilitation of the building to accommodate new commercial tenants and government agencies, including DOF and DCAS. The parking spaces would serve employees of these new tenants. Next slide. At the full board meeting of Community Board 1 on April 28th, the board voted 33 in favor, 3 opposed, and 3 abstaining to approve 2 authorizations with conditions. The conditions were twofold, and I quote here. 1, the applicant provides and expresses its advocacy support for the community's ongoing campaign to reclaim and reopen the Brooklyn Bridge Bank's open space area. And 2, the applicant reduces the number of parking spaces so that a different use, i.e. retail, can be put into that space, which would better interact with and activate the newly designed plaza area. Brooklyn Banks, referenced in the first condition and shown in the top photo, is a park adjacent to the Brooklyn Bridge that was taken over by NYC DOT around 2010 to use as a staging area for bridge rehabilitation. The applicant agreed to support the campaign to reopen Brooklyn Banks. The plaza referenced in the second condition is located immediately outside the south corner of the proposed garage. A key question raised during the redesign of this plaza was whether retail could be installed here. According to the applicant, the load bank, essential infrastructure required for the data center operation of the building, major building cross bracing that interrupts the interior floor area, and the grade difference between the interior of the building and the plaza level made creating and accessing retail space at this corner infeasible. But the applicant activated the corner by way of an art installation that wraps the corner on 2 faces and includes backlit art panels. This is shown in the bottom photo. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any raised hands from the commission? Okay, then we will schedule this for a vote. Thank you, Connor.
Okay, so you've switched from easy listening back to NPR here. Item 4 on the agenda is a presentation for a future certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 1. Our presenter is Hala Salah, and I believe that Commissioner Ramprasad is recused on this item.
Correct.
Okay.
Great. Good afternoon, commissioners. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Hala.
Great. Next slide, please. This is a private application in the Astoria neighborhood in Queens Community District 1. The application is for a zoning map amendment from an R5 and an R5 C1-2 to an R6A and R6A C1-2, as well as a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area to facilitate a new 8-story mixed-use residential and commercial building. Next slide. The project site is located along 28th Avenue between 41st Street and 43rd Street in Astoria, Queens. The area is well serviced by mass transit, including the N and W train, as well as bus service along 28th Avenue provided by the Q18 and along Steinway Street by the Q101. Next slide. This site is located on the north side of 28th Avenue between 41st Street and 43rd Street, except for the, comprises of all or portions of 12 lots. The proposed rezoning boundary has a depth of 100 feet, except for the center line of 42nd Street, which has a depth of 125 feet. The development site, shown in red, is improved with a 2-story mixed-use building with a ground floor restaurant. The remaining lots within the rezoning boundary consist of an overbuilt multifamily residential buildings. The surrounding area has a mix of uses, including eating and drinking establishments, 1- and 2-family residences, multifamily apartment buildings, and community facilities. Next slide. The project area was originally zoned R5 in 1961 and was mapped with a C1-2 commercial overlay at a depth of 150 feet in 2013. The C1-2 commercial overlay was intended to legalize the existing restaurant and parking lot. The area to the west of the project area was rezoned in 2010 as part of the Astoria rezoning, resulting in a C4-2A, which is an R6A equivalent, along Steinway Street, and rezoning to an R6A along 28th Avenue, a wide street. Community facilities are also located to the southeast of the development site. Next slide. The photo on the left shows the development site with the existing ground floor restaurant, and the image on the right shows a series of 4-story multifamily buildings west of the development site with FARs that range from 3.07 to 3.49. Next slide. These again are some additional photos showcasing the multifamily buildings to the east of the development site. Next slide. The proposed development would provide an 8-story mixed-use building with 54 dwelling units, 6,926 square feet of ground floor commercial space, as well as 66 parking spaces, of which 56 would be attended and provided in the cellar, and 10 would be provided in the surface parking lot. The existing restaurant would temporarily relocate elsewhere in the neighborhood during construction. Next slide. Additionally, the development would consist of a 1,800 square foot green roof with open recreation space and an herb garden for the ground floor restaurant. Next slide. The ground floor would comprise of a restaurant, which would be accessed from 28th Avenue, 42nd Street, and a pathway directly behind the structure adjacent to a surface parking lot. The residential and parking entrance would be along 42nd Street. Next slide. The proposed building would be 8 stories and have a base height of 45 feet prior to providing a setback. The setback on the eastern portion of the building is much deeper than the setback provided on the western portion of the development. The building would then continue to rise to a building height of 85 feet. Next slide. Here is a rendering of the proposed building in the existing context of 28th Avenue. Next slide. Next slide, please. The proposed zoning map amendment would establish a R6A zoning district in the rezoning area and would bring the existing overbuilt buildings into or closer into conformance. The applicant would be mapping MIH option 1 and 2. However, it has a preference for MIH option 2, which would provide 16 affordable housing units. The area median income for the Astoria NTA is $63,428. Next slide. In summary, this is a private application for a 8-story mixed-use building with proposed actions of a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment. You can now take any questions. Thank you.
Any raised hands from commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you, Holly. I have a question about this, and it actually is going to come with all these pre-certification, all these applications that we begin to send out into the ULURP pipeline. How, as we launch ULURP, are we confident that the communities to which we are sending these new applications have the capacity to participate in the public review process? Is that a discussion that you've been having with community boards about their abilities to take this on?
Brian, do you want to take this?
Yes, the answer is that we are making an effort to reach out sort of on a community board by community board basis, letting them know that things are coming, and to be quite frank, that the new charter provisions that have the 30-day notice, we've already noticed to the community boards that all of these are coming, and that they, are getting, they got an email on Friday telling them that, and that also the planners are reaching out and, just checking with them. And, we are also talking to the Public Engagement Commission about ways to help them if they need it, right? So if it's either through technology or simply us sharing with them the protocols that we're using to run our meetings.
I'll make two further observations. One is that the decision to restart ULURP wasn't just about the commission. It really is a front to back process. We received numerous questions when the commission wasn't meeting about why, if landmarks had recommenced or the BSA, why couldn't the City Planning Commission? And we noted that we needed the council to be ready, the commission to be ready, but also all of the community boards. And in addition to our outreach, we are also benefited by many borough presidents who are themselves very interested in facilitating the community boards. Part of our soft start or soft restart of ULURP, having the commission meet before the formal restarting of the calendar, was just to be able to work out these any situations that might arise. And we certainly remain committed to working with community boards that are, should they experience challenges in restarting.
That's great. I think that's going to be really important to the success of our ability to pull ULURP off in this remote fashion, is to know that we are getting the maximum engagement we can get from these various communities, because the ways people used to interact with ULURP have fundamentally changed. But our need to hear from communities on these applications hasn't changed.
Right. Commissioner Delahousse.
Hi, sorry, my video's having issues today. The question I wanted to ask, I guess, is kind of similar in line for what Commissioner Levin just asked, and that is, what input or what information do we have about any discussions and presentations that this applicant has had with the local community board? I'd be interested in that. And also, when this comes back, I'd also be interested why they think option 2 is more appropriate than option 1 in terms of MIH, given the AMI levels locally.
Sure, yeah, we'll have the team speak to that. And in terms of communication with the community board, the applicant team did a pre-certification presentation to the Land Use Committee of CB1 in March. So the community board is at least aware of this application.
Commissioner Marin.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask the same question Michelle asked, but Commissioner Delahousse asked, but in a different way. So you mentioned that there are 2 options on the table, and you also mentioned the area median for income being about $53,000. What percentage would you say that is of AMI in that community?
That would probably be, let's see. Yeah, I'll do a quick calculation right now. I don't have it on the top of my head, but.
Yeah, you can get back to me. I'm just curious because we do see a lot of these applications coming in from the Astoria neighborhood, and a lot of them prefer the option 2. Some of them get turned down to the option 1. So I'd just be curious to try and understand what the 63 relates to in terms of percentages. We can always get back to us on that.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Hala.
Any other commissioners? Oh, yes, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Just going back to the question of readiness in terms of all of the participants in the ULURP process. So is September 14th the date that the mayor has concluded that that's adequate time for everybody to be up and running, such that September 14th is an appropriate launch date?
Yep. We are continuing to stick with September 14th, and we think that it will make the ULURP time clocks mesh seamlessly if the department certifies these projects that we're presenting to the commission on that date. That way we won't in any way be shortchanging the review period for the community boards.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, then the department will certify this application on September 14th when ULURP restarts.
Thanks, Hala. Item 5 on our agenda this afternoon is a pre-hearing review of a special permit in Queens Community District 2. Our presenter is Scott Solomon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll just give a second to pull up the slides. Thank you. So today is next slide, please. This is a private application that was certified on December 2nd by Home Depot USA, requesting a special permit to build a 6-story self-service storage facility at 5902 Borden Avenue, which is part of a larger as-of-right retail development in the Masbeth neighborhood of Queens Community District 2. Next slide, please. The project area is in a designated area within an M11 district or Appendix J of the ZR, identifying the site as subject to a special permit for self-storage facility.
Scott, you're going in and out. Your audio is.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Test, test, test.
It is better, for me anyway.
All right, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. The area is predominantly characterized by 1- and 2-story industrial and commercial buildings with low-density residential to the east. As indicated in the map above, there are no self-service storage facilities within a quarter-mile radius of the project area. Next slide, please. The project area comprises an approximately 315,000 square foot lot located directly south of an elevated portion of the Queens Midtown Expressway. The area is generally bound by Borden Avenue to the north, Maurice Avenue to the east, 55th Drive to the south, and 58th Street to the west. The project area is served by local bus routes. The nearest subway station is over a mile away to the north. The lot was previously occupied by a Coca-Cola warehouse and bottling facility shown in the aerial and has since been demolished by the applicant. The portion within the dashed black line above represents the footprint of the proposed self-storage facility subject to the special permit. The larger southern portion of the lot is where a as-of-right retail development anchored by a Home Depot which is currently under construction would occupy. Next slide, please. Photos here of the existing conditions. On the left, a view of development site facing southeast of Borden Avenue. Photo 2, a view of Borden Avenue facing southeast, project area to the right, elevated Midtown Expressway to the left. Next slide, please. On the left, a view of the project area facing southwest of Borden Avenue. You see the beginning of construction. I believe was taken in December 2019. Essentially, the shell of the Home Depot is there, so they're quite well underway in their construction since construction is allowed to resume. Photo 4, the view of Maurice Avenue facing the southwest, project area at the right.
Scott, do you have other headphones or other ways? You have been cutting in and out throughout the presentation.
Yes, I can provide a headphones. If you can't hear me, it's more likely associated with bandwidth.
Test, test. Can you hear me here now?
Oh, yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Much better? Okay, thank you. I would blame it on the airport I live right by, but it is not the reason. Continuing on slide, the next slide, please. Photo on the left show a view of the project area facing northeast from 55th Drive. On the right, a view of 55th Drive facing west from Maurice Avenue, project area to the right. Next slide, please. In terms of actions requested, the applicant is seeking a special permit pursuant to ZR section 74932 to facilitate the development of a self-service storage facility in a designated area within a manufacturing district. Per the ZR, to grant such a permit, the CPC shall find that the site is appropriate for such use based on the land use characteristics of the proposed site and the surrounding area. Next slide, please. Above are the considerations the CPC shall refer to in making their determination. Among the factors that the applicant has identified as consistent with applicable considerations to permit this facility include the long distance between the project area and the nearest subway station as undesirable for potential employees, the observed increase in distribution of warehouse facilities in the surrounding area, demonstrating a decrease in demand for traditional job-creating industrial uses, an estimate of approximately 500 combined additional jobs created from the self-storage and as-of-right retail development, the vast majority from the as-of-right development, and Home Depot's expectations that the self-storage will not only be used by local residents, but by local contractors to store tools and construction supplies, and for small businesses to store inventory. The applicant uses self-storage as complementary to the Home Depot with significant overlap between the Home Depot and self-storage markets. The applicant views this synergy as consistent with the goals of the IBZ, which is to support industrial businesses. Next slide, please. In terms of the proposed development, applicant proposes construction, 6-story, approximately 136,000 square foot self-storage facility located on the northern portion that fronts Borden Avenue. This is, again, part of a larger as-of-right retail development, includes a 1-story, approximately 134,000 square foot Home Depot, and 2 smaller 1-story retail buildings, again, not subject to the special permit. Next slide, please. The building would be set back approximately 20 feet from Borden Avenue and rise to a maximum height of 64 feet, with the main vehicular loading entrance being off of Borden Avenue. Next slide, please. 3 required accessory parking spaces and 4 required loading berths would be provided on the ground floor. Circled in the red dotted line, there would be an entrance fronting southwardly to the Home Depot. This entrance would be accessed by a sidewalk that runs along the length of the Home Depot frontage. So essentially being accessible from both for the Home Depot customers to continue on to the self-storage and vice versa. Next slide, please. Above sectionals for illustrative purposes only, again, showing the 6-story building topping out at 64 feet, stepping back from Borden Avenue at the 5th and 6th floor. Next slide, please. Above the illustrative elevations, above looking from Borden Avenue, below looking from the south, portion of the self-storage that's attached to the 1-story Home Depot, and again, the southwardly facing entrance to the right, providing access for Home Depot customers and vice versa. Next slide, please. Above the rendering showing the self-storage facility occupying a approximately 45,000 square foot footprint, subject to special permit. The remaining portion of the southern portion, the larger southern portion, showing the as-of-right retail development, again, with construction already well underway. Next slide, please. Following certification on December 2nd, Community Board to adopt a resolution recommending disapproval, vote 25 in favor of the resolution to disapprove, 0 opposed, and 0 abstaining. Again, you know, they voted a resolution in disapproval, which is why we get these favor votes, with the condition that the applicant develop the 2 proposed commercial buildings, the smaller retail buildings adjacent to the Home Depot and self-storage facility for industrial manufacturing uses. Again, the committee board only attached a condition to the as-of-right component, not the building subject to the special permit. On March 12th, acting Queensborough president recommended approval with the following conditions. Again, to market the 2 other smaller retail buildings to industrial uses. Again, those buildings not subject to the special permit. and to have a commitment to employ union labor for the construction of the self-storage facility. 4 days later, ULURP was suspended on March 16th. Give this slide, next slide, and I can answer any questions that the commissioners may have. Thank you.
Questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Delauze.
Hi, Scott. Thanks. Now, it's good to be able to hear you in the end. So the question I have, and I can't remember if we talked about this, you know, when this first came before us. Was it originally part of Home Depot's plan to include a storage facility in this development? And the other question I have is just what kind of, especially given the comments from the borough president, what kind of analysis Home Depot may have, or if they're partnering with someone to on this proposal, about the need for storage for the kind of end users that the borough president's recommendation highlighted?
So for the first part of the question, Home Depot always planned the self-storage to be a component of this development. Absent approval of the special permit, their plan to move forward was to occupy the footprint with additional parking spaces. But they've always proposed to add the self-storage facility, which would be operated by a third party. For the other buildings, the plan was always a commercial component to complement the Home Depot uses. Home Depot would not build or run the other retail buildings or the self-storage facility, but I could have Home Depot expand on anticipated tenants that would likely occupy these spaces. They would not be industrial or manufacturing.
If I might follow up, I'd be interested. I mean, I guess I haven't ever seen a Home Depot that had storage attached. So it'd be helpful to know if this is a model that they have elsewhere.
Yeah, you know, there's a Home Depot in College Point, Queens, not a stone's throw away, but it's not attached, but it shares the same parking lot. It is again operated by a third party, and it is in an industrial neighborhood of College Point. Again, the goal of that was led by Home Depot was to include the synergy for manufacturing, commercial uses, or even stores that want to keep inventory that could use the Home Depot. So that's one local example. And this is a new novel endeavor by Home Depot that they hope to replicate in other markets.
Thanks.
Vice Chair Knuckles, to be followed by Commissioner Rumpershot.
Thank you. I noticed that construction has started, presumably on the permitted uses on the site. Are we certain that no work has been done toward the construction of the self-storage space as of yet?
They cannot continue any construction on the self-storage until they get approval of the special permit. It is a blank slate right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Rumpershot, to be followed by Commissioner Burney.
Actually, Commissioner Delauze asked the question I was going to ask, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burney.
So is this a case where we're seeing manufacturing industrial space being repurposed for non-industrial uses? And given there's often a sort of prevailing concern about the diminishing, the kind of nibbling away at what we have left of manufacturing zones, how does the department feel about that in this particular case?
I mean,
Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, sorry. So the special permit requires the applicant address these considerations of, does it serve the greater industrial uses of these areas? When it's not an explicit industrial use, the applicant views this as a complementary use that will serve industrial uses. It is an as of right use. The other uses, the retail uses, are as of right. They do need to at least address the considerations, and they believe it does support the industrial base in this neighborhood.
But how do you feel? I guess my question is, because you guys are obviously tracking, you know, how much industrial space we have left and so on. I mean, how do you feel about the issue of losing a little bit more? Do you think it's merited in this case? Did it give you any concern?
What I'll note on this is, what is interesting is that the conditions at the community board were with respect to the as of right development, not with respect to the action before us, which is this, the special permit, the relatively recent requirement for a special permit for self-storage in M1 districts. In this instance, we think that it makes sense. We anticipate, if you look at the geography where this is located, that the users are likely to be small contractors, small businesses that are purchasing supplies at the Home Depot and wheeling them over to the self-storage. At the time of the adoption of the M1 self-storage special permit, we heard a lot of testimony about this type of use of self-storage, that it wasn't just folks who lived in denser parts of the city who didn't have enough closet space and were using it for their winter coats. The other thing that Scott had mentioned in a previous internal briefing is that Home Depot anticipates that this is going to be one of their heaviest volume Home Depots in the nation. It's a large site.
Yes, and I would also like to point, subsequent to certification, City Planning did receive letters in support from both the council member and the state senator, Joseph Dabo and Robert Holden, respectively, as well as several letters of support from local business owners, which are attached to the briefing package.
Good, thank you.
Commissioner Delos.
So I just want to clarify, because just when you read the report, it's not clear that the community board's vote in opposition was about the as of right Home Depot use. So that is absolutely clear that their opposition is not about the self-storage as much as just the as of right use.
Yeah, I think their focus, it's difficult, I think, for anyone to look at this, to see this large lot and to focus just on the portion of the footprint of the self-storage. They're reviewing this in the lens of the entire development. And they express concerns about the Home Depot occupying industrial space and the other retail uses, which are all as of right uses in an M1 district. So there were no conditions attached to the self-storage building in of itself.
Okay, that's helpful. I mean, do we know if they're going to participate in testimony on Wednesday?
Home Depot?
No, the community board.
I can't speak for the community board, but they're certainly encouraged to.
And we were speaking before about public participation in a remote era. We actually, as we get more and more used to remote hearings, we are actually cautiously optimistic that we will see more participation by folks who might not have been able to make it down to 120 Broadway, but will be able, we hope, to join us remotely. Other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, seeing none, we will see this matter at a public hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Sorry about the audio.
Item 6 on our agenda is a presentation for future certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Brooklyn Community District 7. Our presenter is Amy Jen. Noting that Commissioner De La Hoz is recused on this item.
Right, thank you. I was just going to say that. Thank you so much, Edwin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application by 737 4th Avenue LLC for a zoning map amendment to rezone a portion of a block from an M11D district to an R7A C24 district and map the area as a part of the Special Enhanced Commercial District, EC1. And
did you say R7A or is it R8A?
R8A.
Okay.
Did I say R7A?
I heard that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant R8A. And a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area and to include the project area within the EC1 district. These actions will facilitate a 14-story mixed-use development with ground floor commercial use and a total of 142 residential units, approximately 36 of which would be designated permanently affordable. Next slide, please. The project area is located in the South Park Slope neighborhood of Brooklyn Community Community District 7. Next slide, please. The surrounding area is characterized by a mix of residential uses to the north and east and a mix of industrial, commercial, and community facility uses to the west and south. We can see that the uses along 4th Avenue are quite mixed. So the surrounding area is mapped M12D to the north and west, M11D to the south, R8A C24 to the northeast, and R6A to the east. M11D and M12D are manufacturing districts that permit manufacturing, commercial, and community facility uses. New residential use is permitted as of right by authorization by the CPC. M11D districts have a maximum FAR of 1 for commercial and manufacturing uses, 2.4 for community facility uses, and 1.65 for residential uses. Buildings have a maximum front wall height of 30 feet and are subject to a sky exposure plane with no maximum height. The M11D and M12D districts were created to respond to the mixed-use character of neighborhoods such as this one, where there's a mix of existing manufacturing and residential uses. The residential authorization allows for some flexibility within these districts for the residential uses to continue. R8A and R6A are medium-density contextual residential districts. The Special Enhanced Commercial District, the EC1, is mapped immediately north of the project area along 4th Avenue. The residential areas northeast and southwest of the project area have been contextually rezoned between 2005 and 2009 as a part of the South Park Slope and Sunset Park rezonings. Next slide, please. The surrounding area is characterized by a mix of residential uses to the north and east and industrial, commercial, and community facility uses to the west and the south. Residential buildings are characterized by multifamily apartment buildings ranging from 3 to 6 stories. Community facility uses are characterized by churches and schools of up to 4 stories. Greenwood Cemetery is located 1 block east of the project area, and the Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone is located west of 3rd Avenue. The project area is well served by public transit, with access to the R subway line at 4th Avenue and 25th Street directly southwest of the project area. Additionally, the B63 bus runs north-south along 5th Avenue, while the B37 bus runs north-south along 3rd Avenue. Next slide, please. Currently, the project area is occupied by a 1-story commercial building on Lot 7 and a 1-story commercial building, which we see in the foreground in this photograph, containing a drive-through Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin-Robbins on Lot 1 with an accessory surface parking lot. There are 3 curb cuts along the site, 1 on 25th Street and 2 on 4th Avenue. Next slide, please. And here are just some more additional photos of the project area along 25th Street. Next slide, please. Here are some views along 4th Avenue. So the top row is 4th Avenue looking north. The top middle photo directly north of the project area is a 6-story mixed-use residential commercial building. Across 4th Avenue from that building is the photo on the top right, in which we see a 4-story mixed-use building with ground floor commercial use and upper floor residential use. And then we'll go to the bottom row, which is along 4th Avenue looking south. So the middle photo is directly south of the project area, which also contains a 6-story mixed-use residential commercial building. And across from 4th Avenue from that building is the last photo, which is looking southwest of the project area. And there we can see a 2-story commercial building with a 10-story hotel. Next slide, please. So the applicant proposes to develop a 14-story mixed-use building with approximately 108,000 square feet of floor area to an FAR of 7.2. There will be approximately 100,000 square feet of residential use and 9,000 square feet of ground floor commercial use. The proposed development contains approximately 142 dwelling units, of which 36 will be designated permanently affordable under option 1 of the mandatory inclusionary housing program. The building, next slide, please. So the building has a maximum base height of 105 feet and rises to a maximum building height of approximately 145 feet after a 10-foot setback at the 11th floor. The proposed development would include approximately 52 accessory off-street parking spaces in the cellar, accessible by a 12-foot curb cut along 25th Street, and 78 accessory bicycle storage spaces on the ground floor. Next slide, please. Additionally, the applicant has worked with the MTA to provide an elevator easement along 4th Avenue on the ground floor and cellar portions of the building in order to facilitate accessibility to the 25th Street station of the R line. You can see the easement in these plans outlined in blue. Next slide, please. So here's another view of the project looking north of the proposed building. Next slide, please. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant requests a zoning map amendment to rezone an M11D district to an R8A C24 district and to map the special enhanced commercial district over the project area, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area with options 1 and 2, and to include the project area within the EC1 district. Next slide, please. The proposed zoning map amendment would change the project area from an M11D district to an R8A C24 district. R8A is a residential district which allows a maximum FAR of 7.2 for residential use when mapped within an MIH area, a maximum base height of 105 feet, and a maximum building height of 145 feet with a qualifying ground floor. Off-street parking is generally required for 40% of the non-income restricted housing units. C24 is a commercial overlay that permits a maximum FAR of 2 for commercial uses. Additionally, the Special Enhanced Commercial District, the EC1, would be extended over the project area. The EC1 district promotes a mix of commercial and community facility uses on the ground floor with retail transparency requirements and limitations on parking and curb cuts that enhance the pedestrian environment and create an active streetscape that better serves the growing residential population. New developments must provide windows on the ground floor facing 4th Avenue and may not locate residences or parking on the ground floor within 30 feet of 4th Avenue. At least 50% of the frontage must be occupied by retail and service uses as defined by the special district, and lobbies are limited to a maximum width of 25 feet. Next slide, please. The applicant seeks 2 zoning text amendments, one to Appendix F to designate the project area as a mandatory inclusionary housing area with options 1 and 2. The applicant intends to select MIH option 1. The second zoning text amendment would include the project area within the EC1 district. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from commissioners?
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Oh, thank you. So I have a couple of questions. The first thing is a procedural question. When we do the future certifications, are we referring it to the borough president today, or are we waiting till September 14th to refer for them to weigh in on their comments?
We will let them know of it, but that their ULURP time clock will not start until September 14th.
Right. So, but we notify them, but it's not an official notification until September 14th. Got it. Okay. Give them time to work on it. And it just in looking at the application, I mean, it seems to me a little bit aggressive. You might have gotten it right on at the beginning when you said R7A, because I think that would probably be more appropriate. But I'd like to, before I comment further, obviously wait and see what the community board and the borough president have to say about this, but it just looks a little bit aggressive looking at the surrounding areas for a 14-story R8A. That's my only comment for now.
Thank you. Commissioner Levin to be followed by Commissioner Burney.
Yes, I guess I should ask in advance if Commissioner Ortiz has her hand up, because I have a question about the retail space, and she's always better at that stuff than I am.
Not as of yet, but she may be inspired by her comment.
And mine is, at this point, just a rhetorical question. I know that we spent a lot of time thinking about the special enhanced commercial district regulations along this stretch of 4th Avenue at a time when we were really seeking to activate streetscapes, and we were seeing, you know, parking garage entrances and a lot of dead-end uses right on the avenue. But that kind of seems like a previous era. And I'm wondering what thought the agency is giving to these streetscape requirements in the current economic conditions and retail challenges, which unfortunately look like they're going to be with us for some time. So I wonder, I look forward, this is not a question for now, but something that I hope we can discuss when it comes back for a public hearing about the current viability of the streetscape, the retail and commercial community facility uses. Are we going to see space really being taken up, or is it going to be unmarketable dead space and we should think about something else?
Thank you. Commissioner Burney.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Levin. I was going to ask the same question about the retail. There's been a series of gigantic and architecturally undistinguished buildings all down 4th Avenue, and many of them have killed the street with parking entrances and what have you. So I'm very anxious to see how the streetscape's going to work on this one. I'd also echo Commissioner's duet comment that it seems like a very large building in the context, and one wonders whether it wouldn't be viable at a slightly lower FAR. And finally, I wonder, why do we have accessory parking on a building that's right next to and connected to the subway system? Seems to me we should be discouraging that sort of thing as well.
I can respond to the last question. It is my understanding that they are providing parking as a response to engagement with the community board. The community has expressed that they would like to see more parking in this area. They're providing more parking than is required under the zoning resolution.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Any other comments from the commission? Okay, so this project will join the list of projects that the department will certify on the restart of ULURP on September 14th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. The 7th item on our agenda today is a non-ULURP referral of authorizations and a modification of a restrictive declaration in Brooklyn Community District 1. Our presenter is Syed Ahmed.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, Syed.
Okay. First slide. Yeah. The applicant 420 Kent Avenue LLC requests a set of authorizations and a certification to remedy zoning non-compliances within their recently built shore public walkway at 420 Kent Avenue. Next. The project site is located 1 block south of the Williamsburg Bridge in Williamsburg section of Community District 1, Brooklyn. The site is shown on this map outlined in red dashed line, and the Williamsburg Bridge is to the north of the site. Next. In 2015, the applicant purchased the site at 420 Kent Avenue and proposed an as-of-right mixed-use development. As the proposed development was on a waterfront block, the applicant was also required to provide waterfront public access areas. The site was developed with 2 residential buildings on each side of a visual corridor and an upland connection. Next. The North Tower has 252 apartments, of which 66 are affordable. The South Tower has 605 apartments, of which 121 are affordable. 33 of 121 affordable units are designated for homeless individuals and families. The commercial space in the development comprises of approximately 15,867 square feet of ground floor retail and a restaurant along the waterfront esplanade. Next slide, please. Next. The project area also provides approximately 31,583 square feet of waterfront public access areas, which is 6,621 square feet more than the zoning required. And here is a picture of their built shore public walkway. Next. To the left of the project site is Schaefer Landing, a 350-unit residential development that includes an upland connection and a shore public walkway, which is connected to the newly built shore public walkway at 420 Kent Avenue. East River Ferry Service has a stop at adjacent Schaefer Landing shore public walkway. To develop the site, the applicant was required to get approvals for their WPAA plans, which they received on April 10, 2015 as a waterfront certification under N150324ZCK. As the applicant proceeded to prepare the site for construction, they experienced unanticipated conditions along their bulkhead. Instead of replacing their old bulkhead, as they were planning to do, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation advised them to cap the old bulkhead by building the new one next to it, due to the concerns that the demolition of the old bulkhead would release contaminated soil from the site into the East River. The new location of the bulkhead beyond applicant's property and the subsequent construction of the shore public walkway on it shifted the shore public walkway by 3 to 3.5 feet onto SBS property with their knowledge. That shift in the location of shore public walkway resulted in several changes from the previously approved waterfront plans. These changes were noticed after the completion of the WPAA in September of 2019. The two significant changes are related to the width of the shore public walkway, and the rest are related to planted area modifications. Next slide, please. First change to shore public walkway was the extension of it onto SBS land. That extension added approximately 1,000 square feet of additional area to the shore public walkway. That area is shown here in thick purple line, which is 3 to 3.5 feet long, a half feet wide, and 295 feet long. This addition of land not only enhanced the experiential quality of the waterfront esplanade, but also aligned it with the seaward edge of the adjacent Schaefer Landing shore public walkway, therefore creating a seamless transition from one property to another. Next slide, please. This picture shows the additional area between the railing and the purple line that is not part of the applicant's property and will be designated as off-site public access area. The applicant has agreed to maintain and assume liability for this part of the PAA. Next slide, please. Changes in the width of the shore public walkway. The second change in the shore public walkway width is related to the wetland cove on applicant's property. To preserve the wetland, DEC approved the bulkhead location around the cove that cut into the required 40 feet width of the shore public walkway by 14 inches. Therefore, reducing the width of the shore public walkway to 38 feet and 10 inches at the southwest corner of North Tower. That is shown here on the left side in the large purple oval. The department believes that these two changes in the width of the shore public walkway was beyond the control of the applicant and were caused by their compliance with DEC approved guidelines and plans. Next. However, to compensate for the loss of 14 inches in the width of the shore public walkway, the applicant designated 5,221 square feet of private open spaces on each side of the upland connection and along shore public walkway as public access areas. These spaces are shown here in blue. Because these spaces are now designated as PAA, they cannot be disturbed or converted into hard surfaces for some future use by the applicant. These additional pockets of open space to PAA ensures a superior waterfront public area design. Next slide, please. As the applicant was preparing this ULURP application for waivers and modifications, they brought to our attention the ongoing maintenance issue with their lawn area, which became an unanticipated dog run. Next, please. The applicant proposed to convert the center part of the lawn from grass to user-friendly gravel with additional seating for neighborhood residents and ferry users. The proposed graveled area also serves as a path for emergency and service vehicles onto shore public walkway. This change also contributed in part to decrease of planted areas in the WPAA. To resolve these outstanding issues, the applicant proposes a set of authorizations that would remedy these inconsistencies within their newly built shore public walkway and make changes to improve the functionality of the WPAA. Next, please. Changing the width of the shore public walkway. The applicant requests an authorization pursuant to section 62.822A2, requesting to modify the required width of the shore public walkway at the wetland cove from 40 feet to 38 feet and 10 inches. Since shore public walkway is coincident with the required waterfront yard, a reduction in the shore public walkway also resulted in a reduction in the width of the waterfront yard at the same location. The applicant requests another authorization to section 62.822B, requesting changes in the required screening and planted area requirements in the WPAA. The following 4 changes in the planted area requirements are due to the shift in the location of the shore public walkway, change of lawn area from grass to gravel, design changes at the request of FDNY, and the designation of private open spaces along the edge of upland connection into public access area. Next slide, please. Missing planted screening for a commercial use along WPAA. Section 3734 requires a planted screening buffer within 15 feet of a commercial use in the public access area. Under the original approval, the area below the building overhang, which is shown here, was planted and contained 2 building entrances for a proposed restaurant. The applicant believed that having an active commercial use along the esplanade would enliven the public experience in the WPAA, and therefore removed the planting in front of the restaurant and eliminated one of the building entrances at the corner to create an open pathway in front of the restaurant for outdoor seating. Next slide, please. This change required a screening buffer between this commercial space and the WPAA, which applicant has not provided. Therefore, the applicant requests a modification of the screening requirement to allow a restaurant within 15 feet of the PAA without providing the required planted screening. Next slide, please. Reduction of planted area in transition area. Section 6264C3 requires a minimum of 40% of the transition area be planted. FDNY requested changes in the transition area, which is shown here in this rectangle in the middle, to improve access for emergency vehicles. That reduce the planted area by 97 square feet. Therefore, the applicant requests a modification to reduce the planting area requirement in the transition area by 97 square feet. Next slide, please. Reduction of planted area in shore public walkway and supplemental public access areas. Section 6262C1 requires that 50% of the shore public walkway and supplemental public access areas be planted. The conversion of lawn area to gravel in shore public walkway and the addition of new private areas along the upland connection into supplemental public access areas, shown here in blue, resulted in the reduction of planted area requirement. Therefore, the applicant requests a modification to reduce the planted area requirement for shore public walkway and supplemental public access areas by 59%. Next slide. Reduction of planted area in type 1 upland connection. Section 6264C1 requires that 40% or 2,334 square feet of type 1 upland connection be planted. The project provides 2,138 square feet, which is 196 square feet short of the 40% requirement. Therefore, the applicant seeks to reduce the planted area requirement by 196 square feet. This reduction in the planted area was due to the conversion of a portion of lawn area to gravel within the upland connection. Next slide, please. Waterfront certification and amended restrictive declaration. The applicant is requesting a certification pursuant to section 62.811B, certifying that a site plan has been submitted showing compliance with the provisions of sections 6250 and 6260 as modified through the authorizations proposed above. In addition, the applicant proposes to amend the restrictive declaration to substitute the drawings and the site plans proposed herewith and require the applicant to maintain the off-site PAA on SPS property in accordance with the same terms and conditions inclusive of maintenance, repair, insurance, and indemnity provisions. In conclusion, the proposed authorizations, waterfront certification, and an amended restrictive declaration would allow the applicant to remedy the outstanding non-compliances within their WPAA, as well as make minor operational changes to improve the functionality of the WPAA. The proposed changes and actions will lead to a larger WPAA and ensure better design by establishing more controls over private portions of the site adjacent to the upland connection that would significantly impact the user's experience. That's it. I will take the questions now.
Thank you, Syed. And if anyone ever doubted the complexity of our waterfront zoning regulations, Syed's tour de force explanation of the changes, I think, is proof positive. Any questions from commissioners? I don't see any hands raised.
He did a great job explaining.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will then refer this to the community board for 45 days. Thank you, Syed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Syed.
Thanks.
Item number 8 on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendment, UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property, acquisition and disposition of city-owned property in Brooklyn Community District 16. Our presenter is Anthony Grande.
Anthony, we're not hearing you. If Anthony is having connectivity issues, Winston or Alex, would you want to take over?
Hi, this is Amy. I can take over.
Thanks so much.
Okay, hello again. So this is an application by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development and Department of Citywide Administrative Services for land use actions to facilitate the development of a new 100% affordable 8-story, approximately 98,000 square foot mixed-use building containing 107 affordable units at 1510 Broadway in the Ocean Hill neighborhood of Brooklyn. Next slide, please. The project area is located in the Ocean Hill neighborhood of Brooklyn at the northern corner of Community District 16, bordering CDs 3 and 4. Next slide, please. The proposed project area is one full tax block, which is a roughly triangular block with frontages on Broadway, Hancock Street, Saratoga Avenue, and Jefferson Avenue, with a total of approximately 25,000 square feet. The development site outlined in blue is a city-owned vacant lot with approximately 21,000 square feet of lot area. The site has frontage on Broadway, an 80-foot wide street, and a retail and transit corridor. The area is well served by transit. Halsey Street J and Z station is directly in front of the project area with station entrances 1 block to the south. Next slide, please.
I think I may have been able to unmute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Anthony.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. If you don't mind, I can take over. So this is a view of the project area from Jefferson Avenue, and the elevated rail infrastructure running along Broadway is visible on the left here. Next slide, please. The proposed development would be a new 8-story, approximately 98,000 square foot mixed-use building with approximately 10,000 square feet of ground floor retail space and a total of 107 affordable apartments and 1 superintendent's unit. The building would have a total FAR of approximately 4.59. Along the Broadway frontage, the building would set back after the ground floor to provide a separation between the residential units and the elevated rail infrastructure, and to create an approximately 7,000 square foot outdoor courtyard space as an amenity for building residents. Next slide, please. This is a view of the proposed development from the Saratoga Avenue frontage. Next slide. The ground floor of the proposed building would have approximately 10,000 square feet of retail space with frontage on Broadway and a commercial loading dock on the Hancock frontage. The remainder of the ground floor would be a residential floor area, including a lobby, accessory spaces, and 6 residential units. There's also an approximately 13 by 13 foot square space along the Broadway frontage, which is to be used as a future MTA elevator to access the adjacent platform for the Halsey Street station. So this portion of the building would be sealed off and publicly inaccessible until such time that an elevator could be constructed. Next slide. In order to facilitate the proposed development, the applicants request 4 actions: zoning map and text amendments, the UDAP and disposition, and the acquisition of properties. Next slide. So the first action, the zoning map amendments, the project area is proposed to be changed from an R6 C13 district to an R71 C24 district. R71 districts are medium density residential districts that allow residential uses at a maximum of 4.6 FAR for MIH buildings, community facility uses to a maximum of 4.8 FAR, and quality housing buildings are allowed to a maximum base height of 75 feet and a total height of 135 feet or 13 stories. Parking is required for 50% of the market rate units, and no parking is required for affordable units in the transit zone. The C24 district allows a range of retail and service uses limited to the ground floor of mixed-use buildings and a total of 2 FAR. Next slide. Second, the applicant seeks a zoning text amendment to map an MIH area over the project area, mapping options 1 and 2. Next slide. And finally, HPD proposes an urban development action area designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property, which would apply to the entirety of the proposed development site, which is outlined in blue here. And the fourth action, DCAS, proposes an acquisition of property by the city, which would affect an approximately 13 by 13 foot square portion of the proposed development site. So this area would be reacquired by the city after construction of the building for the purpose of leasing to the MTA for a future elevator site. Next slide. This application was certified on December 2nd, 2019. On January 28th, 2020, Brooklyn Community Board 16 voted to approve the application. The vote was 15 in favor, 5 opposed, and 6 abstaining. On April 9th, the Brooklyn Borough President submitted a recommendation to approve with conditions. So we have a few conditions listed here or summarized here. They're given in their entirety in the briefing package. But in summary, for HPD, the borough president has recommendations discussing permanent affordability, utilizing locally based organizations, setting aside affordable space for local nonprofits, resiliency and sustainability measures, Broadway pedestrian improvements, and then also housing, just discusses housing lottery modifications to include a school zone and also extending local preference to community districts 3 and 4. Finally, there are 2 conditions listed in the Borough President's recommendation for the department and the commission. So the first condition is to modify the MIH program to permit households with rent burden status to qualify for MIH units. And second is a zoning study looking at extending the C44L district further down along Broadway. And to that last condition, I would note, we at City Planning, we acknowledge that Broadway has an opportunity for residential development at a higher density and for affordable housing, being a wide street and a transit corridor. And we'd be happy to discuss this recommendation with the community board and potentially look at this zoning along Broadway. With that, I will take any questions.
Questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. I'm wondering, maybe I missed it in the package. The community board's vote was quite split. Did they send a letter or they just fill out the form and report the vote?
It was just the form. There was not a discussion of rationale or reasons necessarily. Discussing with the district manager, there wasn't a discussion necessarily even at the meeting from the members that did vote no, and the members abstaining. So I think it's a little bit unclear why the votes went the way they did, but they just submitted the form. So
okay, weird. You know, that makes it really hard for us to do anything with. Well, I guess they're recommending in favor, but you know, the message needs to go out to community boards that this is their opportunity to, you know, help shape these applications to address the needs of a community. And this kind of response doesn't really help.
Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you. I just had 2 questions, comments. I'm wondering, since it's so close to the subway, what measures could be taken to protect it from the acoustic and the particulate matter coming from the subway for those people living there. And secondly, I'd just like to discourage the architect from those colors that they're showing in the rendering. I mean, they look okay on day 1, but they look pretty tawdry after 6 months, and they might want to go for a more muted palette.
Yeah, to the second point, I think we talked about that at the certification session. And I think you'll be able to actually discuss with the architect at the public hearing. So we can see the response there. I would note with this building, you know, this is a very interesting and unique design that the building is proposing, with the first floor being the commercial space, and then the sort of extensive setback for the residential portion of the building. So I know part of the intent really was to create some distance between the residential spaces and the elevated rail. And, you know, we supported that decision, and it's part of the reason that this particular district is being mapped, which does allow that type of setback. So, you know, I think that's one of the measures that they're taking to kind of address, you know, the elevated rail presence. But otherwise, in terms of noise and air quality, you know, the environmental review has, you know, would address specifically noise and air quality. So there would be restrictions in the disposition agreement that HPD does with the developer that should have, you know, some requirements for noise in terms of residential windows and things like that.
Yeah, I would have thought at a minimum they'd want acoustic separation in the windows, just to, I would if I was sleeping that close to the subway anyway. So
Yeah.
Other questions from commissioners? Okay, we'll see this at a public hearing this coming Wednesday. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. The next part of our agenda today, the Commission's agenda, is the future votes portion of the agenda. On August 19th, 2020, for future votes, we have prepared the following reports: Weeksville NCP at Prospect Place, NIHOP Old Stanley, and 5914 Bay Parkway rezoning. Those projects are located in Brooklyn. Additionally, we have Industry City. Connie Chan is here to present and talk about that project, noting that Commissioner De La Hoz is recused on this project.
We're not hearing you, Connie.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm just waiting for the screen to be loaded up.
Here we go.
Great. This is the second post-hearing follow-up for the Industry City application, for which a public hearing was held on February 19th. Next slide. This was for a zoning text amendment, a zoning map amendment, a special permit, and a city map change. Next slide. Here's the agenda for today. The first two items consist of information that the applicant has provided in response to the questions posed at the previous post-hearing follow-up session that was held on August 3rd. Next. For the first item, the applicant issued a letter to the Commission on August 11th where they articulate detailed responses to the Community Board and Borough President recommendations. The letter also includes information about some of the outreach and discussions that have occurred between the applicant and the Community Board and Council member over the last several years. The applicant attached 2 additional letters that they formally issued last year to the Community Board and the Council member, respectively. These letters articulate a set of commitments they made to those parties during the course of those discussions. All of those letters were submitted to you last week. If you have any questions, I would be happy to take them now or at the end of the presentation, as I will be addressing those recommendations in more detail in another section of the presentation. Next, advance 2. For the second item on the agenda, the applicant has provided information in response to a question regarding the amount of hotel use in the proposed development. But first, the applicant has requested to remind the Commission that in response to requests made by the Community Board, Borough President, and the Council member, they have stated that they are amenable to the hotel use being removed at the City Council, should City Council choose to do so. However, they do want to be responsive to the Commission's questions regarding the rationale for the amount of hotel use proposed at Industry City. Industry City is a large campus occupying over 30 acres that is projected to be built out and tenanted over a number of years. There is already demand from many of the existing 550 businesses for a hotel at Industry City to serve out-of-town clients and conduct business meetings. The applicant expects this demand to gradually increase as more and more space is activated and built out. In addition, Industry City is a co-leasee of the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which is projected to be a major hub of construction for the offshore wind industry, attracting considerable international business. In addition, the EDC-led development of the Made in New York campus at Bush Terminal immediately south of Industry City will attract additional business activity in the garment manufacturing and media production sectors, and they may also need hotel and conference space. Just last week, it was announced that Steiner Studios will develop a 500,000 square foot film and television production hub at this Made in New York campus. Together, the demand from the existing businesses, along with projected future demand, warrant the provision of hotel rooms and conference space in stages, with 1 hotel built in the near term and a second later on. Given the need to provide hotel space in 2 stages, each hotel must have a minimum size to be functional for meetings and conferences, and with a minimum room count to support its non-room functions. An industry rule of thumb is that a hotel with less than 200 rooms gets into the territory of a boutique hotel with little in the way of meeting space and less of an ability to cater to a business market. At the other end of the spectrum, a convention center hotel would typically require 300 or more rooms. The greater the number of hotel rooms, the greater the ability for a hotel to support non-room functions. A business hotel with meeting rooms generally needs to fall somewhere in between these two standards. For this project, one hotel would contain approximately 230 rooms and the other would contain approximately 190 rooms, both of which are pushing against the smallest viable size for a hotel to serve the business needs of tenants. Next, advanced 2. So before I go through all of the community board and borough president recommendations, I want to briefly revisit the use relief that is being sought by the proposed actions as a quick refresher. This is because many of the recommendations that were issued related to use modifications, and they were quite extensive and quite detailed and issued several months ago. So we wanted to take a step back and provide some context for what the proposed actions are seeking to do with respect to use first. Next slide. Currently, the majority of the project area is zoned M31, and that area is proposed to be rezoned to an M24 district. The uses that are permitted both under the existing zoning and the proposed zoning allow for a range of commercial and industrial uses as of right without restrictions on size and location. This list includes some of the types of uses that are permitted as of right in these districts. They include media studios, art, music, dancing, and theater studios, business schools and trade schools, office, amusements, a range of retail and service uses, though not all retail and service. The as of right retail and service uses are generally limited to 10,000 square feet per establishment. Automotive sales, repair, and service, eating and drinking establishments with entertainment or dancing, wholesale, storage, warehousing, distribution, and manufacturing. This range of commercial and industrial uses are permitted as of right today, meaning they can be located throughout the entire complex without restrictions on size or location. In theory, the entirety of Industry City could be fully occupied by a mix of these uses, or it could also be fully occupied by any single one of these uses, such as office or retail. Apologies. However, as I shared at the last post-hearing review session, the agency staff believe it highly unlikely that a complex like Industry City would be fully occupied by one or two uses. The reasons include the scale of the development, the fact that it is primarily an adaptive reuse project, and its location on the Sunset Park waterfront outside of a traditional central business district. This is evidenced today by the existing mix of uses at Industry City, and we would expect a mix to continue. Next slide. The special permit that the applicant is requesting would allow a wider range of uses to be permitted at Industry City than what is permitted today under the existing zoning. The additional uses being requested are colleges and universities, libraries, museums, and non-commercial art galleries, hotels, all retail and service uses, physical culture establishments, and distilleries. I want to note the zoning distinction between a trade school, which was on the previous slide and is permitted as of right in M districts, and colleges and universities, which are not as of right. Trade schools are often geared towards specific crafts or trades, which may include industrial activities. Colleges and universities typically offer a wider array of subject matter. However, it is possible that a trade school and a college and university could be relatively indistinguishable in terms of their programming. For example, Brooklyn College offers a graduate school of cinema, which is a college and university, which is located at Steiner Studios at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. All of the uses listed here are not permitted in the underlying zoning, with the exception of the retail and service uses. Again, many of these uses are permitted as of right, while some are not. They are grouped together because uses permitted as of right and those not permitted as of right are listed in the same use groups. The most notable type of retail that is not currently permitted as of right that would be permitted by the special permit being requested are retail establishments in excess of 10,000 square feet per establishment. All of the uses proposed to be introduced at Industry City, which are listed here, would be subject to a number of restrictions. Next. These restrictions will include caps on the total square footages that can be achieved. The purpose of these caps is to allow for a wider range of uses while ensuring that these additional uses complement the primary job-generating uses and do not become the dominant uses at Industry City. Colleges and universities, combined with libraries, museums, and non-commercial art galleries, would be capped at 625,000 square feet. Hotels would be capped at approximately 288,000 square feet, and all retail and service uses would be capped at 900,000 square feet. I want to highlight that this cap would include those retail and service uses that are as of right and are currently not subject to any caps in the underlying zoning. In addition to the square footage caps, all of the newly permitted uses will be subject to locational restrictions. Hotels and retail and service are restricted to specific buildings or floors, and retail and service uses would generally be restricted to the first and/or second floors throughout the complex. The size and location of every distillery would be subject to approval by the fire department. The more sensitive uses, specifically the colleges and universities, libraries, museums, and non-commercial art galleries, and hotels, would not be permitted to co-locate with heavier commercial and manufacturing uses in order to prevent potential land use conflicts. Next. Now I will provide an overview of the community board and borough president recommendations together. I will also share thoughts from department staff in response to these recommendations, which we feel are important to highlight generally, but even more so now given the ongoing pandemic and recovery efforts that are underway. Next slide. Because there are so many, I've organized the recommendations into the following categories. A couple of things to note before I begin. First, many of the community board's recommendations were incorporated into the borough president's recommendations. But where they were not, or where they differed significantly, you'll see that a recommendation is noted with CB7 in parentheses. Second, a number of the community board and borough president modifications were addressed to external entities, including other city and state agencies, but also private entities. Or they addressed operational aspects of being a landlord, such as practices related to marketing, leasing, and contracting. Those recommendations are not included here. However, the applicant did respond to those recommendations in the letter they issued on August 11th. I will note that for the last bullet point, I will not address recommendations that relate to the applicability of waterfront regulations, as I spoke about that topic at length at the previous post-hearing follow-up session. Next slide. So prohibited uses. Uses that were recommended to be prohibited entirely from the proposed development are hotels, self-storage facilities, eating and drinking establishments with entertainment and a capacity of more than 200 persons, or any such establishment with any capacity in dancing, automotive service establishments, unless they're limited to renewable energy sources, trucking terminals and motor freight stations with no limit on size, and warehousing not ancillary to industrial uses. Regarding the proposed hotel use, department staff feel that a hotel use is an appropriate and necessary use to support a significant employment center. Many businesses require or desire the ability to provide visitors with accommodations and meeting and conference facilities in close proximity to where they are situated. Despite being a major employment cluster, the Sunset Park waterfront does not have any hotels that have significant meeting or conference facilities. The nearest hotels with significant conference facilities are located in downtown Brooklyn. Hotels with business amenities are a need that is severely lacking, not only here along the waterfront, but in Brooklyn as a whole. In addition to serving as an amenity to businesses located at Industry City, a hotel use would also serve other businesses and operations outside of Industry City. Those operations include significant city-owned sites where redevelopment plans are underway. One example is the activation of the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which will support the offshore wind industry, again, a sector that involves international firms. Another example is the redevelopment of the Bush Terminal Made in New York campus that will support garment manufacturing and film studios. Again, where it was recently announced that Steiner Studios will be developing a TV and film production facility. With regards to self-storage facilities, these uses are already restricted by the citywide self-storage special permit that was adopted in 2017. The other uses listed below self-storage are all as of right in M districts. Department staff do not feel that restricting as of right uses encourages job growth, nor would it facilitate adaptive reuse of existing loft buildings seeking to accommodate modern businesses. The most appropriate location for the 4 uses at the bottom of this list are in M districts, rather than other districts where they would cause more land use conflicts. They are a source of jobs and provide services and amenities to an array of residents and businesses. While we understand there are concerns with some of these uses, We do not believe the solution to addressing those concerns is to ban them outright. With respect to the eating and drinking establishments listed, I want to highlight that nightclubs are an important industry in the city. The Office of Nightlife was created in 2017 to support this industry and address quality of life issues that may arise. I will also note that this category doesn't just include nightclubs, it may also include other types of arts-related uses. We believe that this is an appropriate use in an M district. With respect to automotive service establishments, I want to note that distinguishing the same uses by specific characteristics that are not based on land use is not appropriate. While it is unclear how this recommendation could be implemented or what the definition of renewable energy sources might be, an example of an undesirable outcome of such a definition is that an automotive service establishment that is dedicated to repairing Teslas would be permitted, while an automotive service establishment that repairs other types of vehicles would not. With regards to trucking terminals and motor freight stations, department staff would like to note that from a practical perspective, the project area is not well suited to this type of use, as it is largely developed already. The last item in this list references standalone warehousing. The department does not support prohibiting warehouse uses in M districts. Warehouses are not only appropriate in M districts, but especially on the Sunset Park waterfront, which is close to the Gowanus Expressway and buffered from residential districts. Many warehouse uses are located in M districts throughout the city, including businesses at Industry City and elsewhere on the Sunset Park waterfront. They are an important source of jobs, even if they are less job dense than other types of industrial uses. In addition to the jobs they provide, warehousing is an essential use for the functioning of New York City as a whole. I also want to highlight the unanticipated need for additional warehousing facilities that arose during the pandemic, as some manufacturers pivoted to making personal protective equipment and hospitals required additional storage space that they could not accommodate on site for their PPE. Next slide. Restrictions on retail and service. There are a number of recommendations that propose restricting retail and service uses beyond the proposed cap and locational restrictions that are part of the project. The Community Board proposes to prohibit formula retail establishments, and they provide a definition of what that means, which is shown here. The Community Board also recommended allowing a grocery store only if it met fresh requirements and was located in the ground floor of Building 11. Regarding formula retail, the department does not believe there is a land use rationale to make the distinction in all of the retail and service use groups between uses that meet these characteristics and those that do not. There is a distinction between per establishment sizes of retail uses in the zoning resolution because larger scale retail establishments are likely to generate different land use impacts than smaller scale retail establishments as they draw customers from a much wider geographic area. However, I will note that when there's a significant amount of small scale retail establishments co-located with one another, the distinction between establishments that are less than or greater than 10,000 square feet becomes less relevant. Collectively, a critical mass of small scale retail establishments has the ability to draw visitors from a larger catchment area in a similar way that a large scale retail establishment does on a standalone basis. While this recommendation may arise from concerns about limiting national chains in order to prioritize local businesses, I want to highlight that many local chains in New York City began as single neighborhood establishments. Examples include restaurants such as Sophie's Cuban Cuisine and Xi'an Famous Foods, and clothing and footwear retailers VIM and Jimmy Jazz. The definition provided would not permit these retailers because their success has allowed them to increase their number of stores over time. Regarding the grocery store restrictions, we want to highlight that a grocery store use provides an important amenity for residents and workers, but is an extremely challenging use to operate for a variety of reasons. The department believes that the flexibility for a grocer to select a location and implement its own programmatic and operational practices is needed to ensure the possibility of attracting this type of use. Next slide. The Community Board proposes to reduce the total cap on retail and service uses from 900,000 square feet to 300,000 square feet. The Borough President proposes to reduce the total cap from 900,000 square feet to 750,000 square feet and to include amusement uses within this cap. He also proposed a per establishment limit of 10,000 square feet generally, with more restrictive limits on where some establishments that exceed this threshold can be located. And when there is 150,000 square feet of space occupied by uses that exceed 10,000 square feet per establishment, a post-occupancy traffic study would be performed. The department believes that the proposed limit of 900,000 square feet, combined with the restriction that retail be limited to the first and second floors, is appropriate and will ensure that the retail will not become the dominant use at Industry City. It will also help to achieve another important, though secondary, goal of the project, which is to activate local streets, create an inviting public realm, and draw people from the upland part of the neighborhood to the waterfront. I will come back to the post-occupancy traffic studies later in the presentation. Next slide. The community board proposes that retail and service uses not be permitted in the 39th Street buildings, while the borough president proposes to prohibit retail on most of zoning lot 4 in the 39th Street buildings. This includes all of the buildings west of First Avenue, closest to the waterfront. Primary access to retail and service uses would be restricted on all of the streets between 2nd and 3rd Avenues, where there are finger buildings located on both sides of the street, except through one common access point per street. Direct access would be permitted from 2nd and 3rd Avenues and the interior courtyards. In response to the first two recommendations, the department believes that it would not be possible for the 39th Street buildings to be fully activated with a variety of businesses employing thousands of workers unless there are increased retail amenities available to serve these workers. Aside from the Costco grocery store and perhaps the southernmost finger buildings, there's not a critical mass of retail closer than 4th Avenue. Regarding restricting primary access on the finger building streets, I will again flag that one of the goals of the projects is to activate local streets, which retail is well suited for. While conflicts between retail uses and other commercial and industrial uses can be of concern, the agency notes that the applicant has already constructed a number of raised sidewalks in between the finger buildings that have shown that pedestrian activity, vehicular activity, and loading can coexist. Additionally, limiting direct access to a retail or service establishment is detrimental to those kinds of businesses as they depend on foot traffic and being both visible and accessible. Next slide. The community board proposed that a minimum of 1.5 million square feet of active industrial uses, including business incubator space, be required. They also proposed that office uses, which are currently as of right, only be permitted if there is an equal amount of active studio, manufacturing, or industrial use. The borough president proposes a similar mechanism of only permitting some uses in relation to others, but his choice of uses involved in this mechanism differs. He proposes to limit any retail, service, or amusement uses in relation to the amount of required industrial and community benefit uses. These are comprised of a select group of community facility, commercial, and industrial uses, which is shown at the bottom of the slide. As I shared at the previous post-hearing follow-up session, it is the department's stance that maintaining flexibility regarding the types of uses that are permitted in M districts is critical to allow buildings to accommodate the evolution and diversification of businesses over time and the changing needs of the economy. As the needs and technologies of business cannot be predicted into the future, the department believes that placing requirements and restrictions, particularly on as-of-right uses in M districts, is not consistent with the administration's goal of supporting job growth and job creation. We believe that we must ensure that spaces, whether they are existing spaces to be adaptively reused or new construction spaces, can readily accommodate different kinds of jobs and be able to adapt to changing needs over time. Restrictions that tie some uses to other uses will ultimately have the impact of disincentivizing the job-generating retail, service, amusement, and office uses referenced in these recommendations. An existing business in this category could be precluded from locating at Industry City, or an existing business at Industry City could be precluded from expanding because their future possibilities are tied to the fortunes of another business elsewhere on the campus that is otherwise unrelated to them. One thing to note is that categorizing businesses under specific use groups is not always a straightforward matter. For example, a company that produces patterns for the garment industry may be categorized as a manufacturer because of their production of goods. However, changing technologies in this field have resulted in many pattern-making functions to become increasingly performed digitally on computers rather than by hand. At some point, if a business wants to expand, and this entails additional workstations, it may start to look and feel more like an office in some ways, despite manufacturing the same end product. And they could potentially be recategorized as office, and which could make it non-compliant with these recommendations. This type of mechanism of making some use categories dependent on other use categories would make it prohibitive for a business to operate at Industry City. Businesses will simply seek space elsewhere that is not subject to this kind of restriction. That space may be elsewhere in Sunset Park or elsewhere in New York City, but may also be outside of New York City entirely. We believe that putting restrictions on businesses in many important industries is not the way to support job growth. Next slide. Restricting warehouse uses. As was noted earlier, the community board recommended prohibiting warehouses entirely unless they are ancillary to industrial uses. In addition, for warehousing that is ancillary to wholesale trade, the community board proposes to limit the size to 10,000 square feet per establishment unless the community board approves a larger size. The borough president proposes that the existing special permit in section 7464, which is applicable to trucking terminals or motor freight stations, be applied to warehouses at Industry City. And he proposes to restrict warehouses that are not ancillary to industrial uses by per establishment size and total square footage, with exceptions granted through a CPC special permit. As I shared previously, the agency does not support eliminating warehouse uses in M districts, nor would it support subjecting them to a discretionary action by the community board. I want to emphasize again that these are important jobs that support the local and regional economy and are critical to the functioning of the city, and that the most appropriate location for these uses is in M districts. And also for the last bullet, which references the CPC special permit, as a CPC special permit does not exist for this purpose, the creation of a new special permit would be beyond the scope of this application. Next slide. In addition to restrictions on warehousing, the borough president proposes to restrict other industrial uses as well. Automotive service stations, unless they utilize renewable energy sources, and he proposes to limit accessory retail to 100 square feet or 10% of an establishment's floor area, not to exceed 1,000 square feet. I've already shared the department's thoughts on the first item. With respect to limiting accessory uses, the zoning resolution does not regulate accessory uses in this way. And while this restriction would presumably apply to any type of business, I want to highlight that for many manufacturing businesses in particular, accessory retail is an important component of their branding, as it allows them to showcase their products and processes to reach more customers. Also, it can provide for a critical revenue stream that supports the primary manufacturing functions. There are many businesses, such as those involved in food production, woodworking and furniture production, jewelry manufacturing, and breweries and distilleries that have a retail component that is critical to their business. Next slide. The borough president proposes to restrict any schools to be within 200 feet of Third Avenue. And a point of clarification is that the schools referenced in this recommendation refer to a daycare center, a nursery school, or a K-12 institution. It does not refer to colleges and universities. I will just note that the applicant's proposed special permit does not include a school use. However, I want to note generally that all new school sightings consider site-specific conditions and area needs and are managed by the School Construction Authority in consultation with local stakeholders, including the community board. Next slide. In relation to the various use restrictions being proposed, the borough president requests that the compliance, recordation, periodic notification, and annual third-party reporting that is applicable within the industrial business incentive area located in the Greenpoint Williamsburg IBZ be applied here at Industry City. As I previously stated, department staff believe that requirements that condition development on the inclusion of other types of uses have the potential to hinder investment and the growth of new jobs across a range of sectors, and therefore must be used with extreme caution. This additional reporting requirement proposed would add another layer of burden on the businesses that want to locate at Industry City or for existing businesses that want to expand, and would serve as a deterrent to the activation of the site. Next slide. The community board and borough president have a number of bulk modifications regarding required street walls, minimum street wall heights, maximum building heights, finger building courtyards, and a reduction in the permitted floor area from what the underlying zoning would generate. Agency staff support the contextual envelopes being proposed that will bring the existing buildings into compliance and allow for new buildings to be constructed. I want to note that most of the floor area that would be permitted already exists in the form of 16 buildings, whose form again would be brought into compliance. Applying some of these recommendations, particularly those related to front building walls and street wall heights, would continue to have the existing buildings be non-compliant in a number of locations. Regarding the recommendations about building 11, 21, and the courtyards, contextual envelopes generally allow for some flexibility regarding where floor area can be located. They can also accommodate changes to a building's form that may not be anticipated at the time of an application. In this case, department staff are comfortable with the contextual envelopes being proposed. Next slide. So again, the borough president requests that amusement uses trigger a parking requirement. He requests that accessory parking requirements be triggered when retail uses reach a 40,000 square foot threshold rather than the proposed 120,000 square foot threshold. That access to alternative fuels, electric charging adapters, and additional spaces for car share be required in enclosed parking garages, and increased bicycle parking requirements. Regarding the first item, I want to clarify that the total amount of parking in the proposed development was an outcome of the environmental review, which determined how much parking would be needed for the entire development. While the amount of parking will serve all of the uses at Industry City, the selection of retail uses as the trigger for the parking requirement came out of the fact that retail uses generate the highest vehicular activity compared with all other uses, including amusement uses. And for reference, amusement uses include things like bowling alleys, skating rinks, and eating and drinking establishments with entertainment and dancing. Regarding the parking trigger of 40,000 square feet of retail, there's currently more than 40,000 square feet of retail at Industry City today. The proposed trigger was arrived at because it represents the existing conditions with regards to retail uses. So this is a reflection of the fact that the retail that already exists today is not going to trigger a parking requirement retroactively, as those spaces were tenanted under the existing zoning, which does not require parking when there's a change of use in existing buildings. By reflecting existing conditions, it is the new retail that comes online if the proposed actions are adopted that would then trigger a parking requirement. Regarding electric charging adapters, it is the building code, not the zoning resolution, that contains requirements which have been amended and expanded over time for the provision of electric charging infrastructure in off-street parking facilities. Zoning is meant to last for many years and decades, which is why it allows for flexibility. The technology related to car charging is an example of a field where the technology is changing so rapidly that requirements in the zoning resolution would likely be out of date as soon as they were adopted. Regarding a requirement for car share vehicles, the zoning resolution already contains regulations that permit car sharing spaces. Because demand for car share is different across different geographies and will change both seasonally and over time, the agency's approach to regulating car share is to enable the parking for these vehicles to be provided at locations throughout neighborhoods in response to market conditions. The department does not believe that a static requirement imposed through land use approvals on individual sites would affect the supply of car share vehicles or be adaptable to evolving demand over time. Regarding increased bicycle parking requirements, the borough president did not articulate a rationale for modifying the existing regulations. However, the department has observed that property owners and landlords of large non-residential properties have voluntarily provided bicycle parking in their developments beyond zoning requirements when there is a demand. Next slide. There were several modifications to the special permit findings themselves. The first recommendation is a wording change that the proposed uses are compatible with industrial and manufacturing uses instead of being compatible with existing uses. We think that the special permit findings should address the compatibility of the new uses being proposed with existing conditions at Industry City, which include industrial and manufacturing uses, but also include many other as-of-right uses as well. The second recommendation is a new finding that bulk modifications do not change the existing private street network to ensure access to loading for manufacturing uses. So I want to clarify that the proposed contextual envelopes, which require bulk relief, actually prevent floor area from being constructed on the streets that are located between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. Most of those areas are not actually mapped streets, even though they act like them. Most of it is private property, and today, Industry City could effectively shut those streets down entirely by putting buildings in those areas. The proposed envelopes that are part of this project would prevent them from doing this. Additionally, we understand that loading is a critical function for manufacturing uses, but feel that the work that the applicant has done already regarding the raised sidewalks has addressed the challenges of mixing loading with other vehicular and pedestrian activity. Next slide. Transportation recommendations. The borough president made a number of recommendations related to the permitting or occupancy of some of the new buildings proposed. That post-occupancy traffic studies be required, that sidewalk extensions be built out, and that Industry City contribute funding of a feasibility study of shuttle service that would bring riders from 4th Avenue to 1st Avenue on the waterfront. He also requests that the applicant implement a pedestrian streetscape plan at private and public streets adjacent to Industry City. And the community board also recommended that the applicant pay for traffic studies to be conducted at various intervals following approval of the proposed actions to identify impacts and mitigations. In response to the traffic recommendations, I'd like to clarify that the environmental impact statement analyzed the transportation impacts of the full build out of the proposed development, including the proposed new buildings, in a future analysis year of 2027. The environmental impact statement uses conservative analysis assumptions that may or may not be fully realized. The vast majority of intersections analyzed would either not be significantly impacted or could be fully mitigated with readily implementable traffic improvement measures such as signal phasing and timing modifications and selected parking regulation changes to add a travel lane at intersections. The applicant will be responsible for notifying the Department of Transportation, or DOT, of the trigger points for the impacts that were identified. DOT in turn evaluates the actual conditions at the time of the triggering events. Any mitigations deemed necessary at that time would be implemented by DOT. In addition, I want to highlight that irrespective of the specific impacts that were identified in the environmental impact statement, it is the role of City DOT to monitor traffic conditions and develop measures to ensure traffic flows. In response to the pedestrian streetscape plan, the agency notes that the applicant has articulated a pedestrian streetscape plan, which includes mitigating conflicts between pedestrians and vehicular activity, including loading through the raised sidewalks along the finger buildings, and in the 39th Street buildings by designating 39th Street as a pedestrian-oriented street and shifting vehicular access to 41st Street and 1st Avenue, and by limiting the locations of curb cuts throughout the development. Some of these measures have already been implemented. Next slide. And finally, we will speak to some of the public investments and programs in the broader Sunset Park neighborhood. Next slide. So zooming out and putting Industry City into context within the working waterfront, there are major subsidized and publicly controlled sites that are part of transformative city and state investments, including at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, Bush Terminal, and the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. Combined, these sites make up the overwhelming majority of Sunset Park's waterfront properties, include significant maritime and rail uses, and represent $750 million in public capital investments. $150 million has already been spent at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and there's an additional $100 million in current or future projects there. At the Made in New York campus at Bush Terminal, the city is investing $233 million between the North Campus renovations and the infrastructure for Steiner Studios. The city and state have worked tirelessly to develop support for offshore wind, anchored by a new facility at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, where $57 million has been committed for freight and offshore wind. Also in the pipeline is a $39 million infrastructure project to remove unused rail and in-street cobble and realign street geometries at 3 intersections in the northern portion of the waterfront, and $6 million for lighting upgrades at Bush Terminal Piers Park. These capital and infrastructure investments are on top of the existing industrial support and incentive programs available within the protected industrial business zone, including REAP, IBZ tax credits, IDA incentives, ICAP, commercial expansion program, and ITC, as well as multiple energy efficient support programs, such as ECSP, BIR, SBDI, Cool Roofs, NYSERDA incentives, and finally, the state's Excelsior Jobs program, which focuses on clean tech, green tech, and manufacturing businesses. Bush Terminal's Made in New York campus also offers direct support for garment center businesses and job relocation, and we are thrilled by the recent announcement of the expansion of Steiner Studios at Bush Terminal. Along with capital investments and business support programs, these sites also connect back to local communities through workforce development programs, including training, job placement, and business expansion support through existing SBS, EDC, and IBZ service provider programs, including the Workforce One Industrial and Transportation Career Center located at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, Business Pathways Program for NITRA residents, business customized training grants, AMP NYC, and the recently renewed Commercial Lease Assistance Program. For residents in the upland residential portions of the neighborhood, which are shown in yellow, there are a number of tenant and homeowner support programs. Next slide. Most recently, the Tenant Resource Portal was launched by the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants, which includes resources for eviction and harassment protection. This includes access to the Home-Based Providers Network, the Tenant Legal Helpline, and the Landlord-Tenant Mediation Program. The Office of Civil Justice, out of the Human Resource Administration, also provides legal support, including free counsel to tenants and the Tenant Harassment Prevention Task Force, which identifies pre-eviction harassment issues and corrective actions. For low and moderate income homeowners, Home Fix and the Green Housing Preservation Program provide low and no interest financing for home improvements and energy and sustainability improvements, helping make homes cheaper and safer. And the Home First down payment assistance is available to first-time home buyers. All of these programs are available to Sunset Park residents. I would also like to note that department staff reiterates its willingness and its desire to engage in broader planning activities with Community Board 7 and build off of the incredible work they have undertaken over the last decade, and to look for ways to advance their identified neighborhood recommendations. I'm happy to take any questions.
Wow, that is a lot of information. So I anticipate that we will have a number of questions, and we'll begin with Commissioner Capelli. And actually, I should start by thanking you, Connie, for another great, extensive presentation.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Chen, for a very comprehensive review of a complicated, very important proposal for not only this community, but all of New York City. And I'm very happy to hear the staff's review, and I concur with most of what I've heard as you try to, the staff has tried to sort through the competing attempts to deal with the concerns raised by communities at various levels, including the community board and the borough president's process. One of the things that really strikes me about this particular project, and a project like this is something that not only has an impact on a particular neighborhood, but I believe this project has the potential to be a significant economic engine that will benefit not only local residents, but residents throughout the city of New York. So I think that the approach that you come up with here, as well as the city stepping up to provide resources for the community, for tenants who are concerned, and we see this with any kind of economic activity coming into a neighborhood, making it more successful. The fear of what will happen with their rents and what will happen with other businesses in the area is the only way in which you can approach this and be able to maintain a vital economic infrastructure in the city of New York. And particularly now, post-pandemic, this kind of approach is needed, is especially needed. And so I thank you for that. I'm a little confused as to the timeline on, are we voting on this week? And then does it get held up for a period of time before it goes to the council, or do they get it right away?
So this item is scheduled for a vote on the 19th, and I'll let Ryan from our Land Use Review Division speak to the subsequent steps.
So yes, we will vote on it. We have it scheduled to vote on Wednesday, and then we have the prepare the reports And we work with city council land use staff to determine the exact date that it gets sent over. They, along with the commission and everyone else, are still have their clocks suspended. So their clock won't start on this if we send it over on Friday or Monday or whenever we send over that. Their clock won't start until September 14th, just like everybody else's clock. So, you know,
the one thing that I will note is that while the clock won't start, the emergency executive order stops the clock, but it does not stop us from considering an item like this, from voting on an item, from referring it to the council. The council in turn can actually choose to hold hearings and vote whenever. It only is the official time clock that tells the council, you must act on this by X date, that is told until the 14th of September.
That's right. That's right. And so, you know, we anticipate sending it over to them either Friday or perhaps on Monday, the following Monday, so that they can begin their process of scheduling, you know, a hearing on it and deliberating at the subcommittee and committee level.
Anyway, I am pleased at the approach that we appear to be taking here. I am concerned, and I've raised this in the past, about the city council practice of the local council member essentially having veto power, and there appears to be signs that the council may not do that in this situation. And I think that is by presenting a rational plan, we give the council members who wish to break from that tradition the justification and support that they may need to ward off the veto of the local member and look towards more of a borough-wide and city-wide perspective. So I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Capelli. I don't see other hands raised. Oh, Commissioner Burney.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on what Commissioner Capelli was saying. And it seems to me, I mean, regardless of whether you share the opinion that the local council person should have the right to call the shots on these things, I'm just a little, I don't know, I'm sort of a bit mystified by the process, because as part of that dialogue between the applicant and the community board and the council person and the borough president, the applicant agreed to, in response to some of their concerns about the hotel and retail use over 10,000 square feet, to remove those things, or to at least to severely restrict the retail from the application. But then it turns out they're not actually doing that, at least not for us. They'd rather just leap over us and take the chances with the city council. And I'm pretty offended by that. I mean, I think this is a process at which we put our, you know, we had our opinions and they said they would do something and now they're not doing it. So that doesn't sit well with me.
I'll note that.
In terms, oh, go ahead.
No, please, Connie.
No, in terms of I think that from the prior discussions that have been relatively well publicized, the commitments that were also included in the correspondence between the applicant and the community board in Menchaca, some of it may be a technical distinction that may not be clear to some people, which is that the applicant has publicly stated to support the removal of the hotels, as well as several other aspects of the proposed project, including the reduction in the total amount of retail at city council, if city council chooses to do so. And so I think that that's something that they have shared with the commission at the public hearing. And so I think I understand that, you know, the proposal that you have in hand doesn't reflect those changes. So it may also be this kind of technical distinction of changes being made to the project, and those changes can be made at different points in time.
Well, I find that more than a technical distinction.
Yeah, I agree, Commissioner. If we thought that hotel uses were inadvisable, the department would be advising the commission that we think that they should be removed. In this instance, we actually think that the proposed hotels contribute to the campus and so are not recommending the removal, even while understanding that the applicant has agreed with the council member who believes quite strongly that he does not want to see hotels there.
Okay, but it's not, my point is, it's not a question of what you think or what I think. There's an agreement between the applicant and the oversight bodies, the borough president, the councilman, and the board, and they make an agreement, but they don't change anything. Their application is the same, and that's my issue.
Oh, I understand. I just wanted to assure you that if the department thought that these were advisable restrictions, that we would certainly be recommending them to the commission. We will next have Commissioner Rompershad and then followed by Commissioner Capelli.
Madam Chair, Connie, thank you very much for that presentation. I have two questions, I guess. Number one, just to be clear, how many jobs will be created from this application? Because I keep reading different numbers and I'm just curious.
At the time of the application, there were 7,000 employees. I think at the time now, this application has been going on for several years. So I just want to explain why there may be some discrepancies. And so the 7,000 number was included in their land use application. That's what was accounted for. This application has been something that has been in the pre-certification process for a number of years. The latest employment numbers that we understand from the applicant is that there are 8,000 jobs at Industry City, and the projection is for the full build out of the entire proposed development that there would be 15,000 jobs on site. There are an additional jobs numbers, I think, beyond the 15,000 that are indirect, but the on-site number would be 15,000 is the projection.
And my second question, has Industry City received any written commitments from retailers to occupy space in the building?
The applicant has shared that they're unable to share specifics about kind of the status of their negotiations and discussions with tenants broadly. However, they have been advancing conversations with a variety of tenants, including college and universities that would occupy a significant square footage, and retail tenants that would occupy some square footage at Industry City as well. Those are the kinds of tenants that would not be able to locate at Industry City absent the relief that's being requested.
I believe that the applicant's letter specifically mentions that they had been in discussions with CUNY.
That's correct.
Anything else, Commissioner Rompershad? Actually, Commissioner Marin and then Commissioner Capelli.
You had already noted Capelli, so Commissioner Capelli, please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Commissioner. The point about the hotel, I had said this at the public, prior to the public hearing or either prior or subsequent, it's been so long ago now that I'm be very disappointed if the council negotiates the hotel use to come out of this. Now, I understand why many members of the community were afraid that they were going to end up with another hot cheap motel like they have over on some of the avenues there. And I think that that's, a legitimate concern, but I think that there are clearly ways to avoid that. And I believe that the hotel space is integral to the success of this project and for the ancillary success of projects all along that coast. That you can't let the fear that some of those establishments are operating several blocks away are going to take this thing over. They're by looking at higher end hotel brand names to go in and manage the place. You can avoid that type of establishment in it. And I think that the people who are discussing with the applicant about taking it out are not doing this project and doing the city a service by that. and have folded too quickly on that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we'll go back to the ever considerate and polite Commissioner Buddy.
Thank you. So Commissioner Capelli actually took some of the words right out of my mouth. I really happen to think that for the benefit of this development, a hotel is necessary. We're having people that are coming from out of town. Some folks like to be close to their business establishment. Now in the times of COVID, some folks are going to be staying longer as a result. Some folks make hotels their permanent residences. And there are concerns and there are mixed emotions within the community. You have a council member who's against it. You have the borough president who's for it. We also know that in downtown Brooklyn, there is limited space, convention space for folks to meet and have meetings. And in the days of COVID, where we have to maintain social distancing, it's of benefit to this development to have a hotel with the proper convention facilities to be able to cater to both the folks who are in Industry City, as well as folks who are coming outside from Industry City. I share the concerns about hot cheap motels. I share the concerns about hotels being turned into homeless shelters. I think we've mitigated that by the hotel special permit that we passed a while back. And I think that, again, if this is to work from an economic development standpoint for the city of New York, without the hotel, Industry City, or the proposed future uses, I don't think will be 100% successful. And so I think it's critical that a hotel be there. And then, if there's any way of, there are regulatory agreements that HPD does. There are all sorts of undertakings that could be put into a deed that would restrict this. I'm not too sure that we can do this here, but if we can, it's certainly worth exploring. I think that the hotel should remain in the proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Knight?
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Connie, for that presentation. It was very comprehensive. I just want to build on what Commissioner Capelli and Marin just stated about the hotel. I think it's integral to the project. I think it makes for a better project. And I was wondering if there could be, some significant emphasis on this point in the report that we present on Wednesday.
It's a great suggestion. It's already in the report, but seeing the strength of the commission's feelings about or understanding of the need for the hotel as part of the project, we'll go back and make sure that it is strong enough of noting the commission's very strong support for this, for the project to be successful and to contribute not just to the neighborhood and the borough, but as a citywide economic development project.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other raised hands. I thank the commissioners for your input on this. It's very helpful, and we will again take another look at the report in light of the views that you've expressed. And so again, thank you so much, Connie, for the clear presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie. Also, for future votes on August 19th, 2020, we have 3 St. Mark's Place and the Beth Hamadrash Haggadah Synagogue, a landmark decision. Both are located in Manhattan. On Staten Island, we have 87 Circle Road, 250 Crown Avenue, 600 Metropolitan Avenue, 86 Ridgecrest Avenue, and 6 Hilltop Road, Manhattan Street, 718 Bloomingdale Road, 361 Ocean Terrace, 135 and 145 Cromwell Circle, 217 and 219 Vineland Avenue, Eugene Street and Amboy Road, 551 Richmond Road, and 3651 Richmond Avenue. For September 2nd, 2020, a decision is scheduled for the Alexander Hamilton House, also known as Hamilton Grange, landmark amendment.
And I believe, Edwin, that it brings to a close the business before us at this review session.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Great. Well, thank you to the entire Department of City Planning team who behind the scenes are allowing us to meet so smoothly. And thank you to the commissioners as always. See you on Wednesday.
Thank you. See you Wednesday.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This concludes the review session of the New York City Planning Commission for Monday, August 17th, 2020. The time is 4:04 p.m.